Well, for us being live, that's horrible lighting.
Mm.
There we go. That's better. It must have taken a second.
Yeah.
We're awfully far apart now. It's like I put it way back there so we could both be seen, and now somehow, not even 2 feet apart, it looks like we're a mile apart.
Yeah. Weird.
So, hello, everybody. Just gonna start up my thing here. Already a lag. That's lovely.
There always is.
But now I've got the chat room here, so I don't have to read it up there.
Mm-hmm.
So, remind me, Dawn, we did a book tag together.
Yes, we did.
So, what were and are your favorite genres?
I like mystery and suspense.
Mm-hmm. Me too.
Yep. And I like some sci-fi and fantasy, but it really has to be something that catches my attention. And
Is there any particular examples that you can think of that caught your attention?
Let's see. And Stephen King, but you got me into Stephen King because I would not read Stephen King. Then I met you, and the next thing I knew, I'd read like 5 books. Stephen King.
I am the evil influencer.
And my mother's like, "What are you reading?" Oh my goodness. She was like so upset with that.
Oh, well, whatever.
Well, it was funny. And my grandmother, forget it. You're reading terrible books.
Say 10 books.
You're gonna go to hell. But I'm like, Hannah, it's really not that serious. It's just a book.
Yeah, my grandmother never actually really cared. Well, one of my grandmothers is very judgy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, she came over once and she saw an erotic thriller from the video store on the table. She's like, "Star!" It's like she didn't even have to ask. She knew it was mine. It's like, what? I like thrillers. Yeah, it's an erotic tutu. I'm 17. If I'm gonna watch a thriller, it's gonna be an erotic thriller. Sorry.
Mm-hmm.
You know? My other one, oh, she used to be such a treat. She will watch things like Rosemary's Baby and People Under the Stairs with me, but she'd be like curled up like this.
Like, no, I can't look.
Yeah. And it's like I would wait for her to come home from work because she'd always sit down in the living room and read the paper. And then I'd put something on.
You were a little evil.
She could have walked away, but she couldn't take her eyes off the frickin' screen.
It's like a train wreck. You just can't stop looking.
Yeah. Yeah. So I like young adult fantasies. I like urban fantasies. I like psychological thrillers. I do like horror, but I've noticed my horror is reasonably specific.
Mm-hmm.
Like I don't tend to like the gothic horror so much.
Mm-hmm.
Like everything I see in my Library for the Blind catalog that says gothic horror just doesn't sound, or if it's under occult and horror, I'm like, the psychological thrillers are scarier to me.
Yeah.
Maybe because it deals with slightly more realistic characters. Vincent, volume. If I have to tell you again, you will be going to bed. Thank you. How many times have you turned that down since I started prepping us to go on live?
Can I turn up a little?
Only a little. Like 3 points, not 20. Ugh. It doesn't have to be on mute. It just can't be deafening me in the kitchen. So we wanted to talk about books and stuff. Some of our favorite authors, somebody we'd like to read more of that we haven't read yet. And we'll also, if there's an adaptation on film or TV of those books, we might discuss those or just discuss adaptations of books we're aware of, whether we like the book itself or not, because we might love the movie.
Mm-hmm.
So we thought we would cover that. And it sounds like tonight's going to be an obnoxious 9-year-old night. So if you guys are there and you can't hear us, let me know. I will drag the computer closer and we will just not be able to see both of us at once. Because that looks like how it's going to go. I'm going, why don't you start? Because you have like next to nothing written compared to me.
Mom?
I just have a few of my favorite authors. I like Jonathan Kellerman. I read one book by his son Jesse that was pretty good. I know he has a couple more, but I haven't read any more than that. I've read some Stephen King. Getting more and more into the Stephen King.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see. When I was younger, I read some V.C. Andrews.
Yeah, I've got that too. I just want to send the link to a couple of people real quick. Oh, now the light's going off. How lovely. Shh.
And I recently started reading 11/22/63 by Stephen King because there's a. Excuse me.
Vinny. No, you won't touch the dog. He's trying to be a showman right now. Has nothing to do with him being mad. Excuse me. Mom stood up. He knew he was in trouble.
Yeah. Sorry
about the shaking the computer, guys.
Yeah, my mom actually kind of got me into V.C. Andrews when I was old enough because my mother used to. Well, my mother was.
She thinks Stephen King is evil.
I know.
I don't think she ever actually read V.C. Andrews.
She did, but apparently she
missed
a whole lot.
Missed all the incestuous overtones.
Yeah. I don't know how you could miss it that much in those books.
Apparently, she did not read Flowers in the Attic or any of the Doppelganger series, which is on my list actually. So,
yep. And let's see. I do read some young adult fiction too, a little bit. James Patterson. But he's got a million books. Well,
he crosses almost every genre out there, from true crime to thrillers to children's fantasy. He has that book Crazy House, and now he has the next book in the series. I'm not sure I'll listen to that one because that one just smacks too close of dystopian exhaustion to me. I'm exhausted with all the dystopian novels out there. Like, I like The Hunger Games a lot, like the whole series, but it's like there are so many, from The Long Walk to The Running Man to Hunger Games, to The Giver. Just The Giver's more utopian, but it's malicious utopian, So, and it's like if you're too old to work, or you're under a certain weight, or you're a twin, you die anyway. So,
yeah.
Yeah, so it's still dystopian. It's just a different type of dystopia disguised as utopia. Any books in particular from those authors you want to talk about?
Well, let's see. I remember when I first started reading the James Patterson, the Women's Murder Club series.
Lindsay Boxer series.
Lindsay Boxer. I remember starting the first one, and I was really, really impressed with one, and then I read the second one, and I was like, oh, I kind of like the first one more. And then, so it kind of varied for me in that series, and I still haven't read all of them. I think there's something like 25 now, or
there's 17, I think, right now.
Are there?
Yeah.
Okay.
16 or 17.
16 or 17.
I think 16th Seduction just came out, maybe something like that. Yeah, I've listened to pretty much all of them up until like the 11th or 12th one, and then I just got exhausted. It was too much. The same thing happened with Alex Cross. It's like I got to like Mary, and I just got overdone with Alex Cross. Like once I hit 14, I'm like, okay, I'm done. For most of the series that I read.
I think there was one book that I didn't particularly like by James Patterson, and it was kind of almost a standalone book. It's a book, and during the book, he is writing a book about
Alex Cross.
Yeah,
Alex Cross's trial.
Alex Cross's trial. Yeah.
I know of that one. I did try to read it, but I was still so exhausted. I can barely go back to. I think I listened to Kiss the Girls a lot. And it's like the only one because it's like my favorite of the Cross books. I mean, I still love the whole Suniji adversary and the mastermind.
And the mastermind.
Yeah, but I mean, I just really like that specific book as itself, Kiss the Girls. So, I mean, the mastermind and Sonji are each like 3 books apiece. Like, it takes a while for Suniji to get out of prison and all that, but you know, once he does, he sticks around for a while. And the mastermind he's active before we know he is. So
yeah, because we don't realize it.
Yeah, or Alex doesn't. We do.
Alex, well, yeah.
After 2 books, we get clued in. It's 3 more books before he gets clued in. So, I also really love listening to so it's Kiss the Girls in the Alex Cross series. It's the 6th target for the Boxer series, the Women's Murder Club, and then I love Step on a Crack for the Michael Bennett series, the first one. I think I listened to 3 of his and then got bored in the 4th one. So I don't know if it's Patterson fatigue or what it is. There's a standalone book he's done I've listened to twice called Kill Me If You Can. That's a really good book. It's about this guy who's I think it's in Grand Central Station when there's assassination attempt. Hang on, somebody. Yeah, I'm looking. It's Andy. I have returned, he says. How you doing?
How are you?
So we're talking books, just talking about James Patterson stuff. But yeah, it's a man. He's an art student in Grand Central Station when an assassination on a mob guy goes down, or somebody connected to the mob. And there's an open locker because he was trying to get into the locker, and there's a old doctor's bag full of diamonds. And he basically lets the guy bleed out and runs away with the diamonds.
Yeah.
And then you find out that he was actually the assassin that took him out. But they write it as if they're 2 different people for a while until it decides to clue you in. And it's so much fun. I mean, I was kind of like, I liked the concepts, but the writing felt weak the first time. And then the second time I was like, yeah, I just enjoyed the story still. So I'll go back to it. And I liked it better the second time. It did not feel as weak to me. Let's see. I think I like Step on a Crack because it takes place primarily in St. Patrick's Cathedral in New York.
Yes.
And it's just that whole hostage situation. I remember when the movie Salt came out, I was like, hey, that's St. Patrick's Cathedral. That's where the story takes place. Because there's a funeral taking place there that Evelyn Salt, gets into. And it's like ties, storyline ties. Like, I would love to see St. Patrick's Cathedral. I'd also love to see Notre Dame, but that's kind of not going to happen now. Even if they restore it, it's never going to be restored to its former glory in our lifetimes.
No.
So that sucks. So which V.C. Andrews books did you like? Because other than the Doppelganger series, I remember liking My Sweet Audrina.
I don't think I read anything except the
Dollenganger.
Dollinger or Dollinger.
Yeah, Dollenganger, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, I keep saying Doppelganger because it's easier. If I meet one more Doppelganger, I'm going to have to learn how to spell it.
Okay, Dane.
He says it like 4 times in the series, so I was like,
yeah. That's an obsession for another day.
Yeah. Another month.
Yeah.
A couple months, 3 months from now. So, yes. I really like the Flowers in the Attic series. I found it really odd, especially since I was a late teen, early 20s when I was reading it. So I think I was at almost the right age. But I was like, how did people get away with writing this for young adults? Because there's all this incest in here and it actually condones it in the long run.
Yeah.
Because, her and her brother have sex without really knowing what sex is per se. I mean, he has a clue, she doesn't. And he feels like he raped her. And then, 2 books, like, is it the next book? I think
Petals in the Wind was the next
book. Petals in the Wind, something about gardens. I think that's the 3rd one. And
Secret Garden.
Secret Garden. No, it's not
No,
Secret
it's not
Garden.
Secret.
But the 4th one is Seeds of Yesterday. If There Be Thorns? That's one
Yeah,
of them.
that's one
Is
of
that
them.
the second or third one? I think that's the second one.
I think that's 2, and then
And Seeds of Yesterday must be the third
we're
one.
asking a lot of my memory because I was like 19.
I'd have to look it up. I'd have to look it up, and I just don't. I don't have the patience right now. I just don't. But then I think there's one called something having to do with shadows, and that's the one that actually is about the grandmother that kept them locked in the attic in Flowers in the Attic.
Mhm.
And there are adaptations for that, of course. There was the one with Fletcher, Victoria Louise Fletcher, whatever her name is. I forget what her name is exactly. But she played Nurse Ratched in One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest.
Mhm.
And she's great as the grandmother. And now that I've read the prequel, she's described as like 6-foot Amazonian woman that's just very homely, you know?
Yes.
So it's like she was perfect. I mean, I don't know what her actual stature was, but with the severe wardrobe and everything, she looked like a giant. You know, she looked like somebody that could have been a bodybuilder under all that severe dress. And in the Lifetime movie series, because Lifetime made movies based on all 4 of the actual Dollenganger books.
Mhm.
They didn't do the grandmother's story, but Ellen Burstyn from The Exorcist and other movies,
Mhm.
she played the grandmother. And I just remember watching that like, these movies suck. Like, she was good in it, you know, it's like, but she's way too little. You know, she just wasn't intimidating enough. It was like all I could see was the hysterical mom from The Exorcist. But I mean, you know, I've watched the movies a couple of times now, the Lifetime ones,
Mhm.
and the problem is only that there's stories that take place starting in the 70s, like the 60s to 70s, and they end later, like probably in the 90s.
Okay.
But they look and feel like they're period, not even period films. They look and feel like they were made in that era.
Yeah.
Which it's okay, it adds authenticity to it, but there's something off-putting about some 70s films.
Yeah, there is.
So that was a problem for me. You know, some of the acting was like very 70s too, which I did not like.
Mhm.
But I mean, Lifetime actually had the balls to keep it.
Mhm.
Hi, Epic. How are you doing? I'm sorry it took me a little bit to look down there and see you there. And I also know there's lag. As soon as I put my phone on, it was being bitchy. We're talking about V.C. Andrews novels. Do you have any of those available over there in Finland? Doing good. That's good. Good to know. It's times like this I wish I had your guys' massive kettle. Your 50-cup thing, because then I could just tea already. I won't have to keep setting up my tea kettle.
More.
Yeah. So it still just says doing good. But my sweet I think it's my sweet Audrina. So, some of the titles are really similar.
Mhm.
But I think it's my sweet Audrina. It's this girl that lives very isolated in her house, and they took clocks and calendars out and everything. And her cousin's a mean little bitch and everything. But it's like time has stood completely still, and she thinks she's a certain age and all these different things, and she keeps hearing about. Okay, hang on. We might, but they're not very common if they are in undertranslated titles, so I probably won't recognize ever seeing any. Okay. So, I don't know what Flowers in the Attic would be over there, or the Dollenganger series, just to fill you in on that. But, she keeps being, her cousin is being very spiteful all the time about a sister she lost, an older sister she lost, and how perfect she was, and how she's ugly, and she's such a mess, and, you know, she's stupid, and blah, blah, blah. But it turns out she actually is that supposed older sister, like the main character who's being mocked. And the thing was that she was assaulted.
Mhm.
And she kind of went nuts.
Yep.
So her family did everything in their power to cover up what happened to her and basically give her a new sense of self.
Right.
But they've been keeping her for a couple of years under lock and key. hidden from the world, and, you know, everything that happened to her. And she ends up falling in love with this guy who turns out had seen what was happening to her and walked away. She ends up married to this guy.
Mm-hmm.
And at the very end, she finds out, I was assaulted. Everybody hid it from me. I'm not allowed to cope with it. The guy I'm married to, I think in the book, though, because I actually saw the movie more recently, because Lifetime has been on a BC Andrews kick. I want to say that maybe in the book he could have been the guy that assaulted her, but I don't think so. That sounds like it's going a little bit too far.
Mm-hmm.
But he was in some way, shape, or form responsible for her going through the extreme that she did. You know, like by walking away or not telling anybody or whatever.
And not
Yeah.
alerting.
And she was going to finally walk away and claim the life for herself. And she ended up being like, but they're mine. And she ended up getting out of the car and going back to them. And that's the end of the book. And I'm like, fuck that. I'd be gone. Fuck that. Her father made her life miserable.
Mm-hmm.
You know? Oh. So it was just a hot mess.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, then there's the story. I don't remember. I think it was Coralina or something. There was another one where she gets adopted, and then every night she sleeps super, super soundly. You know, she's like a girl of age. You know, like a breathing age, essentially.
Mm-hmm.
And she gets adopted. Shut up, stupid dogs. She gets adopted and she sleeps so soundly every night. Eventually, she finds out she's being drugged every night before bed in this drink that's supposed to be good for her. And the dad, her adoptive mother, can't have kids anymore, and they're trying to make her have another kid or something like that. I can't remember all the specific details, but VC Andrews was fucked up.
Yes.
Yeah.
Very.
So it's like, how are these popular with young teenage girls? You know, it seems so dark. You wouldn't want, you know. I mean, I knew they appealed to me because I have a very dark side, so maybe that's what the audience was. But
I don't know. They were pretty extreme.
Yeah.
Like,
okay, Flowers in the Attic starts with kids getting locked up, being poisoned by their grandmother, and you know, and then leaving, and then it ends with, well, the second book ends with her, the elder sister of the four kids. She's been married twice. She has two kids, one by her first husband, one by her second. And when she dies, her second husband, who knows their story, is like, you can't have kids anymore because of what happened when you had our baby. Chris is still madly in love with you. Why don't you move away, change your name so nobody knows you, and just raise the kids? And they live the rest of their life as a married couple, even though they're brother and sister.
Yeah, that's not alarming at all.
And it's okay. It's like, what the hell? I mean, it's a great story, and it goes to show how love can mean different things to different people, especially when you've been through something extreme together.
Yeah.
And they go through a lot of extremes together.
Yes, they do.
So it's like, it's almost like Jaime and Cersei in Game of Thrones. You can't completely blame them, but, you know, I mean, you can blame outside sources for their hot mess. But, you know, so, you know. Okay, that's just the tip of the iceberg here, is the VC Andrews. We talked about a little bit of James Patterson.
Yep.
I love Kiss the Girls, the movie, by the way. I love the book and I love the movie.
I haven't seen the movie. I read the book.
You haven't seen it? It's Morgan Freeman. You haven't seen it?
No.
Shut up, dog.
He's protecting us
from
all the horribly scary people that are around us, apparently. And so,
would you stop hurting yourself, you nut? See, I know that tone of voice. I was not alarmed. This is your writing.
Yes.
That's the one I think you're looking for.
No, I'm looking at yours because we haven't talked about hardly anything on yours that you.
Yeah, about anything at all. Yeah.
Yeah.
Some of it is repeat. Like I do have VC Andrews there. I do have James Patterson. But
yeah, but in one of your favorites, I know Christine Feehan.
Yeah, Christine Feehan's good. She writes romance novels, vampire type stuff. I think I mentioned this when I did my vampire stream, but in her books, the vampires, they're a race separate from humans called the Carpathians, and they have like very vampiric skills. They need blood to survive. They can die in sunlight and all that. They have different powers, but after 200 years, they lose their emotions and the ability to see, and eventually that will lead them to despair. And the only thing that will ever make them feel or see in color again is to either take a life, which basically gives up their souls and they turn into vampires and they're solely evil from then on, or they find their life mate. And the first book, Dark Prince, is about the prince of the Carpathian people discovering that his life mate is a psychic human woman, and that's something that's never happened because they are a dying race. They tried things like seeing if they could convert human women and stuff like that before, but they've all gone deranged, insane, like child killers and stuff like that, like kind of like Lucy Westenra and Dracula. And they've needed to be killed, like they've turned vampire essentially. But turns out that some psychic women are actually compatible and can be changed and can be life mates to their people. But it's one of those very intense Neanderthal man in charge type characters. All the guys are like that. It's just who they are. But it ends up working. There still end up being partnerships, The women are usually very strong, and some of them are submissive, but they're okay with being that way. And I'm like, well, that's kind of me anyways. I'd be perfect. I would actually be okay with that, depending on the relationship. So, as long as it wasn't like abusive, I'd be okay with that. Let's see. So
talks a little bit about James Patterson.
Oh, she also does another series where there's like a government conspiracy, the shop type things, like where people have been experimented on, and they've been given these preternatural abilities.
Okay.
And their DNA has been fucked with, so they have all these preternatural abilities like fast healing, super health, super healing, super speed, whatever. A lot of them are soldiers. Like the men are pretty much all soldiers, and the women were made to complement that. Like they were all bought at baby farms and stuff, and raised in this underground orphanage, and had their DNA fucked with and stuff. And then eventually they were dispersed in the world. But it's another life mate type thing. They find each other, but their DNA was fucked with, so they were engineered to be attracted to each other, so they would end up breeding these superhumans. Yeah, but it works the same way, where it's still a partnership, and it's all these other,
Yeah.
So, and I liked that too for a little bit, which is why by the time the new Beauty and the Beast TV series came on, I was done with it. It's like I'm done with the super soldier shit. But.
What was it? Oh, I was going to say something about Karen Slaughter.
Oh.
I had read I just was reading a book, and forgive me for not remembering the title. That's how great it was. Not. But
Karen
in it,
Slaughter?
No, it wasn't her book.
Oh, okay.
Somebody in the book was reading a Karen Slaughter novel.
That's
like
funny.
A character in the book
Okay.
was reading the novel, and I'm like, oh. And
it's so funny when things like that pop up because you were just reading it and you just heard about her from me.
Yeah.
So I was reading Stephen King's The Outsider, right?
Mm-hmm.
And my mom came home with a couple of audiobooks, and one was Harlan Coben. I was like, this isn't for me. It kind of sucks, and I went to throw it away. And that night I was listening to The Outsider, and the teacher who's a suspect in that story is like, I was at a Harlan Coben meet and greet.
Oh, wow.
I was like, are you fucking kidding me?
Just funny how things come up.
It's serendipitous,
Well, there's something, they say in the brain, they claim there's something, I think it's called the reticular activator, where if you say you got a new car, and then you notice all the cars that are the same as your car, and you didn't see them that much before, but now that you've bought this car and it's in your, in your brain, you see it everywhere.
Yeah. You recognize it.
You recognize it and it was always there. You just didn't.
Whereas I can find the most oblique shit to the Family Opera, the Wizard of Oz. It's just it's in my brain, so I find it. Yeah. What else we got? We got, of course, Susan Kay's Phantom. I mean, that's another one of my big favorite books, one of my top 5 of all time. Not just because I'm in the Family Opera, but it's a really good book. It's a fan fiction, tells his whole life story, including the events of the Phantom of the Opera itself. And then there's a epilogue involving Raoul and his child, although it's not his child.
Oh, okay.
But he doesn't realize this at first until, they're like, we're going to have an emergency C-section. He's like, no, the child can't possibly survive 2 months before he's supposed to be born. He's like, kid's going to be about a month early.
Yeah.
It's like, oh.
Oh.
Yeah. Anne Rice, we've discussed this. I've discussed the Vampire Chronicles before, but we didn't discuss the books yet. And have you read any of those? Or
I have not read those. I've only seen movies.
okay, fair enough. But I mean, I used to love Anne Rice. Now she's just way too out there for me. But I loved the original 4 or 5 Vampire Chronicles books, and I read more than those. But eventually, got tired of it. But she's just so rich. It's just she's one of those over detailed authors.
Yeah.
Like every texture, every hue of every color, every smell.
Mm-hmm.
It's written about. And like in Memlock the Devil, that was great because he ends up being in a room that's almost like the room of requirement in Harry Potter. And it's like great to go through a room like that with Anne Rice narrating it.
Mm-hmm.
But then there are other times where you're just like, could we get to the bloodletting already? Or whatever the hell's going on. She also wrote 2 other books. One I don't remember very well, but it was called The Mummy, Ramses the Damned.
Oh.
And it was basically The Mummy, but it was like this erotic type thing almost.
Okay.
Yeah, Ramses. Instead of like Imhotep, it was Ramses, and he was more of a loving. It was like Dracula, if made by Francis Ford Coppola. Kind of. I'll talk very briefly about a book by Alan Cumming. It's a biography book called Not My Father's Son. I think I told you about that when I was reading it, or because I had the audiobook that Alan Cumming read himself.
Mm-hmm.
Could be hard to understand his accent. He's Scottish, so it's very thick brogue, and can't understand him sometimes. But he talks about a very specific time in his life. He was about to be on the British version of Who Do You Think You Are?
Mm-hmm.
The Lifetime show. I mean, the TLC show.
The TLC show.
And his father knew he was going to be doing it. His father was very abusive, a jackass who lived in Australia or something. Hadn't seen him since for many years, barely talked to him. Always had some sort of problems involving the press whenever his father came up into the subject,
Mm-hmm.
So it was a very hostile relationship, but he talks about his father called him and said, I need you to know before you go do this genealogy thing, you are not my son. And I don't want you to get hit on the head blindsided by that on this TV show.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, he was blindsided by this because his dad told him. And he's like, what? My mom had an affair and this and that and what? How am I going to bring this up with my brother? How am I going to bring this up with my mother? And I don't dare confront her. And he goes through all this turmoil while making the Who Do You Think You Are show. And then he finally gets to, and his father will not do a DNA test with him. And he says, basically, well, fuck you. I've got a brother who I know is your son. So I'll just do my DNA against his.
Right.
And it turns out that whole time that he was still his father's biological son. And his father was claiming that his mother had an affair. And he's like, didn't you ever wonder why we never bonded? Why I couldn't be what you needed me to be and all this. And he's like, you were still an asshole to my other brother. What the fuck? Don't give me this bullshit. And
I'm an ass because I'm an ass.
Basically. Yeah. And then, after he finally finds this out, he does talk to his mother about it.
Mm-hmm.
And she's like, I didn't know he had that kind of evil in him, because when he confronts his dad and he's like, hey, guess what, Pops,
Mm-hmm.
And he was like, I had to believe it, son. Do you understand? And he hung up and he never talked to his dad again before he died.
Wow.
Yeah. I think his dad only lasted a few months or a couple more years. But it's also, while he's going on this journey, he's trying to learn things about his grandfather, who was in World War II, and then basically he re-enlisted after World War II and lived in India for the rest of his life and separated from the grandmother, never came back and stuff. And he comes to realize that his grandmother must have had an affair or something, had a kid that might not have been his grandfather's, But also finds out that in this little tiny town where he lived in, like, I don't remember where it was, the Philippines, India. I think it was India, This little teeny tiny village, there was actually a whole street named after your grandfather. But because of all the PTSD and everything from the war that went on in his life, he lived a very reckless lifestyle while he was still a very wonderful, giving man to that community. And he ended up dying playing Russian roulette. Yeah. So that's nonfiction. That's Alan Cumming. It's like, but it was such a moving book. I had to talk about it.
Yeah.
I mean, I've read a couple of other biographies, like one of Betty White's, one of Carol Burnett's, Kristen Chenoweth, but a few of them are really that interesting. And I love Alan Cumming as an actor. He was Nightcrawler in X-Men. He was in the first Annie remake. Yeah, he's good. He's awesome. Hey, yo! Stop barking at the whole wide world. I know our neighbors are obnoxious, but come on. You're being obnoxious. Lie down. Lie down. Come on. This is what my life is like today. Down. Hands up. Lie down. Are you being a bit? Are you stonewalling me?
You being obstinate?
Yes. Lie down. Standing here wagging his tail against my side and ignoring me. Oh, okay. I guess that's not going to happen. Still there, Andy, Epic, Mo, are you there? Anybody there? I love the Dresden Files. Everybody knows I love the Dresden Files. Yes. I love all of them, but after like book 7 or 8, it's like they just take off from me. Like I like all of the stories, but it's like after that point, it's just he hit his stride. Like the author and the character just,
How many are there?
Somebody. Hello, Mo. Still here. I didn't even know you were there. Seriously, I didn't see a comment. I didn't know you were there for sure. Okay, let me look this up real quick. Means I'm not going to be able to see the chat room until I get back there. Well, I mean, it's up there, but Search. The Dresden Files. Go. Somebody said something longer, I think. Yeah, I know you can't see at that distance. It's okay. We'll look in a second. We will look in a second. One. So changes is 12. So book 11 is where I start like just loving it then. Because the book before changes is Turncoat. This Turncoat, Changes, Ghost Story, Skin Game, and White Knight or something like that.
Okay.
And yeah, or White Knight, Skin Game. So wait. Changes is 12. So 12. Remember 12. Ghost Story, White Knight, Skin Game. So 13, 14. There are 15 out right now.
Okay.
And then there are a bunch of short stories that are like in compilations. And we're still waiting for book 16.
Oh, okay.
After Changes, he was actually supposed to be died off, but they had to pull Sherlock and Moriarty. So, because he wanted to kill the character off. Okay. Oh, Epic says, painting a face on a doll. What kind of doll? Been here the whole time. Okay, awesome. There's also a little lag. I don't know how much at this point.
It doesn't seem quite as bad though.
Yeah.
As it's been in the past.
Yeah. See, Marissa Meyer and the Lunar Chronicles. I love that. That's a young adult science fiction fantasy.
Okay.
They're retellings of fairy tales. Like the first one is Cinder, which is the retelling of Cinderella, and it's Cinder is a cyborg girl in New Beijing who ends up falling in love, with the emperor Kaito, and you know, she has the evil stepmother and the evil stepsisters, and there's this plague that's wiping out a lot of the population. But she finds out she's immune.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, cyborgs are like this big taboo subjects, like they're treated like fourth-class citizens.
Mm-hmm.
Like they're treated like property. And then even though it's Cress's story, the whole series is Cress's story, but then it like other people are main characters of the other books too. You know, it's just moving her story forward through other people's stories. The second one is Scarlet, which is Red Riding Hood.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, Scarlet is a mechanic who ends up meeting this guy who's scientifically enhanced,
Mm-hmm.
like wolf-like.
Right.
The third one is Cress, which is Rapunzel. And then there's Winter, which is kind of Snow White, and that's the culmination of the series. But then there's one called Winter, which is about kind of like the wicked stepmother of Snow White,
Mm-hmm.
like her story. Except obviously, you know, they're called different things, and the evil stepmother Snow White is actually the queen of an alien race, and Cinder was actually the real queen of the alien race,
Mm-hmm.
and all that. She just didn't. Enzo! Jeez, he's so barky today. Old Monster High doll. Oh, okay. Fair enough. Oh, an old Monster High doll. That sounds cool. You'll have to share a picture on my Discord.
Enzo, shut your mouth.
They're supposedly possibly in the works for making a movies based on the Lunar Chronicles.
Oh,
So I'm really hoping they do that.
that would be neat.
Yeah. You know me and my retellings of the fairy tales. I love those. We talked about VC Andrews already. John Linkfist Let the Right One In. That's the vampire one that is also turned into the movie Let Me In.
Okay.
With Chloe Grace Moretz when she was younger. But it's child vampire.
Enzo,
And
shut
it's a
your
coming of age
mouth.
story for a human boy that, and even though it doesn't say so in the story, he ends up becoming a vampire too.
Oh,
Take care of my dog.
I would love to take care of your dog, but I'm live and I can't stop him from barking if he's in the mood to bark, sadly. Enzo, go play with your brother. Go play with your human brother. Go. We talked about James Patterson. S.E. Hinton's The Outsiders. I fell in love with that book in high school, and then I saw the movie with like Patrick Stewart and what's the Karate Kid's real name? You know who I'm talking about. The dude who played Danielson. For some reason, I can't think of his name half the time. I had a lot of people, and I had Matt and Dylan and Diane Kane. What's her
Diane Keaton.
Was it Diane? No. No. She was in Unfaithful. I'm trying to remember her name. Diane Lane, I think. I think it's Diane Lane. I could be wrong. She's a redheaded girl. You know, Patrick Stewart and all kinds of people were there. I think Tom Cruise was there.
Ralph Macchio.
Thank you, Mo.
Thank you, Mo.
You're the person that always knows. It's like I know the name, but I always forget. You know? I just always can never think of it when I need to think of it. It ticks me off. But I love The Outsiders. That was, you know, she was 15 when she wrote that book.
She was?
Yeah, she was 15 or so when she wrote that book. It was probably published when she was a little bit older. It's a story about 50s greaser kids, you know? And she lent me the audiobook. And I ended up taking out every summer after that. Because I think she lent it to me my sophomore year. So between my sophomore year and my junior year and my junior year and my senior year, I kept taking it home with me for the summer so I could listen to it.
Mm-hmm.
I would just lay there and I just doodle and just listen to the book over and over again. Cool. Yeah. I really love that book. Gregory Maguire's Wicked, and the series of the Oz series, which is the fan fiction. You know, Wicked, Life and Times of the Wicked Witch of the West, which inspired the Broadway show, which is vastly different. Wicked is way darker, a little bit edgier, sexier, more dangerous. And of course, you know, Elphaba, the Wicked Witch of the West, is actually kind of the heroine.
Yeah.
She's an anti-hero, but she's, you know, because she kind of slowly loses her freaking mind over time. You know, like by the end, she was lovers with this one guy, and at the very end, when Dorothy and her crew are coming up after her, she is convinced that the Scarecrow is her lover in disguise, even though she knows he's dead.
Okay.
You know, which is probably what inspired the end of the Broadway show when she does actually commit a spell trying to save his life, and he is the Scarecrow at the end. You know, but like the characters are all there; they're just very different. I got Karen Slaughter. I love Karen Slaughter. She writes a lot of psychological horrors. Just trying to remember. I don't think I wrote down the name of the series I'm most comfortable reading of hers. Sorry about the silence, guys. I have to rest my throat for a second. And Dawn can say anything she wants in the silences.
Take a hint. Pick it up from me, darling. Okay.
It's not that you have to pick it up. It's just I know that you have a harder time remembering things. So
I do.
harder
It's
for you to-
unfortunate. I'm basically a young person who probably remembers less than like my dad. My dad remembers things that I don't even remember. He's like 70. It's ridiculous.
Mo, I know you don't read, but do you want to get in on this conversation? Maybe we can keep it more circular too. Because I wanted Dawn to be part of this. It's just I know it can be a little difficult for her. I don't want to torture the poor woman. You know?
I appreciate it.
So if she's up for it, we can bring her into it. But that's up to her. You have to wait for the lag to catch up, of course. So until she answers, there are a couple of books by Karen Slaughter I really like. I would really recommend them. I really hope they make them into movies someday. There's The Good Daughter. This one, I kept having to comment on the Discord on this one because it was visceral. Like I couldn't believe how much horrible detail she was putting into it. Like it was almost to the point where you read some authors and you wonder if they get off on putting the characters through all that shit.
Yeah.
It was like borderline that.
Hmm.
I'm like, I think she gets more out of this than I do, and I love to torture my characters. You know? But this almost feels fetishistic. But
Is that a word?
nope, I made it up. From the dictionary of star.
Oh, good. Your husband has his own dictionary too. I learned so many different words from you guys. It's fun.
I know, like da.
Well, that's dad.
Yeah, that's true.
That's dad.
That's from the dictionary of Jim.
Yeah.
So it's The Good Daughter starts with these two sisters whose father, he's the kind of lawyer who defends all the scumbags because he just believes that everybody deserves a good defense.
Yeah.
And he's defending a black guy in the deep south.
Well,
So
that
he's
should be no problem.
kind of Gregory Peck's character in To Kill a Mockingbird, if I remember that story right. I didn't even like that one, if I'm remembering correctly. But because of this, their house had recently been firebombed by Molotovs. So they're living in this really rundown farmhouse now.
Mhm.
But then two guys show up with guns and everything, and they kill the mom. Like they come looking for something, supposedly. Most of the stuff I've read are manga or graphic novels. I have a graphic novel version of The Vampire Lestat and Servant of the Bones. Oh, Servant of the Bones! I vaguely remember that one. I think I read it or tried to read it. I remember the title. Don't remember anything about it though. So they end up blowing the mom away, taking the two girls out into the woods. There's already a pre-dug grave there. One girl starts to run away. One girl gets shot in the head and falls into the grave. She's buried alive, and the other one tries to get away. And this is all described in explicit detail. And one of the two men keeps being very suggestive about the things he'd like to do.
Mm-hmm.
And then it cuts to the future where one of the sisters, I mean, both sisters ended up surviving, but one of the sisters has just had a one-night stand, and she's married. You know, she just had a one-night stand with somebody. Goes to return his cell phone because that's how, you know, because he left his cell phone behind and picked hers up by accident. He's a teacher at a middle school. So she goes to give him back his cell phone and get hers, and there's a school shooting while she's there. Yeah. It's small school shooting, but there's a school shooting. It was like right before school would have started. And her father, of course, is going to defend this young teenage. Well, she's not a teenager. She's like just 18 or something like that. This one young lady who did the school shooting. And that's where it begins. You know, it brings the other sister, the one that was shot in the head and left buried alive.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, it turns out that the other sister who tried to run away, there's this one scenario that says, I don't remember the title of the chapter, but it says what happened. And it's about how she ran away, but they caught her and they started beating her up. And then the other guy came along and pulled them off and she ran away. But then there's a chapter, what really happened, in which case she didn't get away and she was all kinds of fucked up. Like she couldn't have kids because she was assaulted, you know, anally, vaginally. He assaulted her with a knife blade first and like all kinds of stuff, you know, before somebody else came along. And it turned out the guy who ended up, one of the guys was killed later on after the fact. But it turns out that guy wasn't actually involved, and the guy she had the one-night stand with was the other guy.
Oh.
You know, the one that was trying to tell him knock it off the whole time, don't do that.
Yeah.
Just let's do this and not do that. Yeah. But because the other guy was calling him brother, she identified him as somebody else.
Right.
And, you know, the town hated her and her dad. You know, they're like, oh, they're just a bunch of liars and they framed and blah, 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 you know. But nobody knew that. You know, she didn't know it until the end of that book. You know, when they were adults.
Wow.
Yeah. And there was this whole stigma against her because I guess when she finally did run away, she ran to a house. It turns out the house of the girl she ran to, the woman was much younger. Obviously, you know, she was like in her early 20s maybe, but she was at the school shooting too. She was a teacher there, or, you know, principal's wife and a teacher there or something, years later. But there was a lot of talk in the town about how weird it was because she asked for 2 bowls of ice cream before she told anybody what happened. Like, they let her in and she was a hot mess and she asked for 2 bowls of ice cream. It's like, well, she was in extreme shock.
Yeah.
But nobody understood that or accepted that, and they just thought she was just this cold woman who had a lie to tell. You know, cold, like, early teens girl who was told to lie and did, you know. But when you see all the flashbacks, she asked for those bowls of ice cream because she was extremely lactose intolerant. And she asked her mom that day, what do you think would happen if I ate 2 bowls of ice cream? And her mother said, your intestines would probably explode and you would die. So she wanted to die. That's why she asked for the 2 bowls of ice cream, you know. But she could never explain that to nobody, you know.
Right.
I mean, it was a brutal fucking book. The late horror show. Dino, how are you doing? It's good to see you. I'm sorry, it's we can't see these very well today. We wanted to be able to be actually seen on the screen together, so that's further away. We can't read the chat room, and this one's down here, so we don't see it right away. And lag. I'm good. I'm glad to hear that. We're just talking about all kinds of books, all kinds of authors, some adaptations. We haven't gotten to King yet, so I know you might want to get involved in that one if you're around. If you're not doing your own live stream or whatever later. Because last time I was doing a live stream, and like as soon as I got off, I saw that he was on. I'm like, oh, that's why he wasn't here. That's for sure. Not that you have to be on every one. I was just curious, you know. Not that you even have to come at all. But there's another one called The Kept Woman that I really liked, involving recurring characters from series. So that's the reason that was the most interesting to me. I can't even go into that plot actually because that one's much more convoluted than the difficult one I just said. But it's another thriller. And Pieces of Her it's another independent one of this young woman who's like an EMT dispatcher, and she's eating dinner with her mom in a restaurant in a mall when there's a shooting. And the way her mom reacts to that shooting brings a lot of speculation on her. And then that night, her mother is attacked in her house. And she's there. She's not supposed to be, but she's there, and she ends up killing the guy who's trying to attack her mom, threatening her mom. And her mom tells her, like, she pulls something out of a hidden spot in the couch and tells her, "This is your birthday." And she's like, "That's not my birthday." She's like, "No, the password is your birthday, and it's this day." And she's like running around the country, and she's like, her mom sends her to the storage unit, and there's millions of dollars in cash in there. There's a car that's been registered in Canada. There's like ID. There's all like multiple IDs with her mom's face on it, and she looks a lot like her mom in those pictures, and all this stuff. And she's like, "Who the fuck is my mom?" Yeah. Because like when she's talking to this guy that does the shooting, he actually goes to, like, she thinks her mom is this small town girl who's like lived her entire life in one area, and then went down here and lived the rest of her life in this area. Like small town mom, not that much of a busybody, does her crocheting, does her fitness, but her mom catches a knife, and the guy's like basically out of bullets. He goes to stab her. She catches the knife with her hand, so that knife goes through her hand, and she grabs the knife and disarms him with the knife in her hand. So something's weird there, And they end up flashing back, and you find out her mother was essentially a Patty Hearst. Or Patty Hearst if she was she's basically a Squeaky. Do you know who Squeaky is?
No.
She was one of Marilyn Manson's devotees.
Oh,
like she's still devoted to him now. She was basically one of them. She did get disillusioned eventually when she was pregnant with her daughter, and they were going to blow up all these different places as acts of terrorism and stuff, and they thought they were going to be this new anarchist order and all that. But because her mom ended up turning on them, that's why she's in danger now.
Right.
She was she was in witness protection her whole life after that point.
Yep.
And this guy that keeps showing up where she is across the country when she's trying to run away like her mom told her to. This guy pops up at least twice, and he's actually the U.S. Marshal that's in charge of her mother. Her mom's witness protection handler.
Yeah.
But it's like he had made, he was making out with her and stuff because she's sitting on him in a bar. And, it's all very interesting, different stuff. So that's my Karen Slaughter psychological thriller stuff. Then there's Lisa Gardner. I love her Deed Warren series. Again, the twisted stuff. Did somebody... I don't think somebody did. No, okay. It just looks weirder up there. It looks like there's more.
Don't look up there. Look down
I've got to stop it.
You can't see it anyways, and neither can I. So just
don't bother trying to use that as a clue. Yeah. If you think of another story, just let me know.
Okay.
Because I know you had like 3 things written down after 2 days of brainstorming. It sucks when your memory just doesn't want to focus right. I've been there. I don't have it at the level you do, but I've been there for certain things. Lisa Gardner also writes psychological thrillers. She writes a Dee Warren series, which is a Boston police detective. And she has other series that are related, has crossover characters. But the first one I listened to her was Find Her. Find Her and Look for Me are both Flora Dane books, although they're Dee Warren books too. Find Her is about Flora Dane, who had been a kidnapping victim. Like, she was a girl at Boston U from Maine who went to Florida for spring break and got abducted, and she was held captive for like 468 days or something like that by this guy.
Wow.
Before she was rescued. And it's years later, she's turned kind of vigilante. She's trying to find another girl in Boston who's disappeared. And she ends up getting kidnapped again by somebody.
Wow.
So, I mean, in the very beginning, she's like at a club, and she expects that she's going to be on the bus some guy for trying to assault her or something, and just be Batgirl or something. And instead, even though it looks like he is going to maybe try to push it and assault her in the alley, some other guy comes and brains him on the head and kidnaps her.
She can't catch a break.
No, she ends up killing him, in which Dee Dee Warren comes to the scene, and she's kidnapped out of her apartment that night. Yeah, and this ends up turning to be her original abductor's daughter, who she had met while she was held captive. But it was a detail that she never told anybody about, because at the point she met the guy's daughter, she was being forced to be bait and luring victims for the both of them together to her, and she was ashamed of that. So, and Dee Dee Warren's trying to find her and find this other missing girl who Flora herself is trying to find. And then in Look for Me, there's a family shooting. Everybody in the family is dead except for one girl, so she's a suspect or considered possibly just missing or kidnapped or something by whoever did it. And Flora has started a survival chat room group for survivors of violent crime, women of violent crime. And this group come together because they had just inducted this young lady who's a suspect. And it's about her and how her mom had been like a crack girl. Her mother was a recovered drug addict, but she lost custody for them for a while. And her little sister had gone through fucking hell in foster care system for a year. And it's about all that and what led up to her family being murdered and whether she did it or not, and all that. And Love You More is another Dee Dee Warren book, but that's about a state trooper who supposedly shoots her husband for beating her, and her 7-year-old daughter is missing. And Dee Dee Warren has to discover where the daughter is, if Tessa Leone, if the state trooper actually killed her husband, why she killed her husband, if it was affirmative offense or not, and all these other things. And they're very, very complicated plots, but they work very well. And one of the things is they find out she had killed somebody when she was 16 in self-defense. It was her best friend's brother. So all these complications always come up. Do I have anything else before we get into the king and stuff? Yeah, the king. Did I always say that? No, I didn't say those yet. Okay, we'll have to make sure I keep these up. Make sure I list these before we get into all the king stuff, please. Because we know we'll be talking king. Unfortunately, there are no adaptations on film of many of these. I would love to see a TV series or a film series based on the Dee Dee Warren stuff. It's like I said, I've got a dark side, so I like all these dark psychological thrillers. Especially since there is a lot of promise and hope at the end. They're not particularly nihilistic. They're just visceral.
Yeah.
Chevy Stevens is another psychological thriller with visceral stuff, because she's a Canadian author, and her series most of her books that I've read, they're either being told, they're psychiatrist sessions. Like they're transcripts of, oh, hi, doc. I wasn't sure I wanted to come here. This is all bullshit. It's told like Dolores Claiborne.
Okay.
Because you know how Dolores Claiborne is the confession of Dolores Claiborne.
Right.
It's like that, except it's being told to a shrink in most of the books.
Right.
And it's the same shrink in each book, except for one of the books where it's the shrink's story.
Okay.
It's her story. There are other books I've read that are not, but Still Missing was the first one I read. This is another woman gets kidnapped and held captive by a sicko for a long time. And he kidnaps her from where she's holding an open house as a realtor and keeps her in a cabin locked away. She has no idea where she is. And the story is being told after the fact, so she's telling her shrink what happened to her. And she had a baby while she was up there from the guy, and the baby ended up dying from the flu or being very sick. And then she eventually got hold of an axe and killed the guy because he thought he had her brainwashed and turned his back on her and right in the head, clunk. And the thing that set her off was he said, "We can have another one," like, yeah, you're gonna just. you're gonna be able to just replace my daughter. You know. But it does turn out that's another like twisted ending. Like a lot of these have the twisted, weird twist endings. Like turns out she was supposed to be kidnapped temporarily, like for a couple of weeks. Like her mom set it up because she wanted to like she's like highly competitive with her sister, and her sister has all the good stuff happening to her and her family's life. And she wanted to get money because her husband sucks at money managing, and he gets like all these like get rich quick schemes and stuff that all fall through and all that. And she's just like she's victim, I'm the victim, nobody understands, and I can show my sister up, and this and that. And it's like at the very end when all this is done, she's like talking to her daughter, she's like, well, you're gonna defend me and you're gonna find me the lawyer, and she's like, bye mom. Bye. Because no matter how anybody tries to put it to her, she doesn't feel anything for her daughter. Like she's like, this wasn't about you, this was never about you. And it's like, this guy raped me hundreds of times, is responsible for the death of my baby, it's like, and this happened to you, It's like all that stuff. And then there was Never Knowing, which is about a girl who was adopted. She decides to look for her biological parents. Her mother immediately rejects her when she finds her bio mom. And then she finds out her mother is the only survivor of a serial killer rapist, and she is the product of that. But because she was doing all this research into the background of her bio parents, the guy finds her and starts stalking her. Like he wants to have a relationship with his daughter and his granddaughter. Yeah. Always Watching is the Shrink story, in which she's in a psych ward dealing with a certain patient who ends up killing herself, but what's going on in that and in her daughter's life reminds her of a time when her and her brother were with her mother in a cult commune, like a Manson Ranch type thing. And she, that all those memories come back and certain mysteries get solved and stuff. So they're all twisted psychological thrillers, but it's psychological thriller. If it wasn't somehow twisted, it wouldn't be a psychological thriller. It would just be a detective story. You thinking of anything else? You looked like you had an idea for a second there. For a hot little second.
Gone.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I hope you think of it again.
It's so bad. I start listening, and then I'm like, I was going to say, and I'm like, do I interrupt her next time? I'm just going to be like.
Yes, interrupt. Interrupt, because it's better I lose my train of thought than you lose yours. Okay?
Okay, so next time I will interrupt.
What was it? Did it have something to do with psychological thrillers?
It did. It had something to do with, I like it's a lot of them. Almost every psychological thriller I've ever read, I've liked.
Yeah, except for some of the John Grisham ones.
Yeah. Well, that book wasn't that bad. It just took me a little while to get through it.
Yeah.
And in the end, it wasn't as awful as I thought.
Well, the one you were talking about that one, and I'm thinking, so it's like the Devil's Advocate without all the supernatural evil mumbo jumbo going on. So it's boring.
Yeah.
So it's boring.
Pretty much, it was boring.
The book she was telling me about this book. It's about
it's
lawyer.
He's
king
of torts, and torts are like class action lawsuits where like this drug company is being sued because
25 people
had heart attacks, and this is the settlement, and how they're making all this money off of, because they get the percentage of what they win, so they're getting like millions and millions of dollars at a time. And then in the end, they basically just him and his wife run off with a ton of money. But
yay! Right, I'm gonna step on some toes here. I won't be talking about Twilight, but I do like Stephanie Meyer, and I do love The Host. I love The Host, which is kind of like the Pod People, except Pod People is actually completely different doppelgangers versus an alien being implanted into a human host. which is what the host is about. Because in that book, the human race is essentially gone. They're all hosts. But this one host gets put into a human being that they find out the later that they've been assimilated, the less and the more aware the human host was of what was going to happen to it, the less likely they are to just disappear. Because originally they're gone. You know, you could take the host out and the host would have eventually just died because the consciousness would be gone.
Right.
And so her host doesn't disappear and is a voice in her head. And she keeps her from getting information to find other humans that are there still around and stuff like that. And eventually ends up finding all these memories of the girl's lover and little brother, and she misses them. Like the soul, they call themselves souls on Earth, wants to be with them and find them and protect them and all that. And it's really good. And you know, there is a movie based on this. There is an adaptation, which is okay. But what I didn't like was that they took it and they really did make all the assimilated people very much pod people, except for the seeker, so like a cop type, who is after the host called Wanderer. And the host is Melanie, and the creature inside of her is called Wanderer, aka Wanda. So I'll just say the host person. So she's like, they're the only two anomalies really in the movie. And everybody else is just like, we walk very calmly. We have no expressive emotions. What?
I'm hungry.
You have a pile of snacks.
Yeah, I made you a mountain of snacks to get you through the live stream.
Can you open this, please?
We can absolutely do that, yes. Thank you, Dawn.
Hi, everybody. So,
the pain in the butt is saying hi.
Okay, here's your.
Do you have any questions for me?
You're desperate to take part, aren't you? Just desperate.
Yeah, he is. Come on.
If somebody asks you a question, I will let you know. Is that fair?
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, I got one for you.
You can't go in there.
Yeah, I've got one for you. What's your favorite book that you ever read? Or had mommy read to you, or whatever the case may be?
Well, it might be Pet Kitty or Phantom of the Opera.
You liked Family Opera, really? It didn't feel like you liked it. I got him that.
I do.
Okay. I get in here with that. Thank you. I got him that more or less kid-friendly version of Family Opera for Christmas. So it's actually told like Phantom, where it's all told from the Phantom's point of view, and it tells a little bit more of his actual life story. But he still does all the same bad things. It's just told in an extremely dumbed down way. Which is actually a little scarier. I'm like, he's even more of a sociopath in this version. He's that very. It was perfect for a 9-year-old to understand the very selfish, unempathetic aspects. You know. And he likes Bad Kitty books. He likes the little kid graphic novel thingies. Alrighty, cool. Thank you for answering that.
And look on the chat, so anyone asks me a question, I can answer.
Okay. So yeah, I was saying that in the movie, all the assimilated people have like their deadpan, except for the one seeker who seems a little unhinged. Like she's trigger happy and stuff, and she seems like very angry. Well, in the book, it gives you a reason that she's like that, because when they finally take the soul out of her, Lacey, her host person, never disappeared and was this really obnoxious fucking person in her head this whole time, like screaming at her in her head. And I mean, she's one of those people like everybody puts up with her because she's another human and they're so glad to have her there. But at the same time, she's like this. What do you mean we all have chores? Why do we have to work? And I don't like this food, and I don't want to live in a cave. And she's just very, very aggressive, And it's like that's what the person who took her over, that's what the alien that took her over was kind of like. And it was because of that. But they don't show that in the movie. In the movie, they take her out, and then you see the seeker. You never learned her name. And she's just like, oh my God, thank you. I've been screaming in there for years. And that's the last you hear from her. You have no idea why this woman was the way she was, but it's like, oh my God, I feel so bad for her now. You know, she had to put up with this, you know? And they also make it a point of saying emotions are very hard to handle. They're so extreme and beyond anything that the aliens have ever known before on any of the other planets they've ever assimilated, you know? So souls have a tendency, they're very communal, it's like pure pure communism. Like actual pure communism if it was right instead of what it is today, you know? Like everybody gets even everything, and there's no war, there's no hunger, there's no poverty, there's no, you know, everybody gets along, everybody gets their share. You know? But that doesn't mean they don't have emotions. It doesn't mean they can't get angry. It's offensive to them, it's alarming to them, but they get along so well they wouldn't get angry.
Right.
But that doesn't mean they don't have emotion, you know? Like they
just probably have a lot of unexpressed emotion.
Yeah. Like there's basically a shrink in there called the comforter. You know, they call them comforters, the aliens, who's like, oh, everybody cries in their first year. She's like, it would be amazing, like a beautiful sunset would set me off, and sometimes even just the taste of peanut butter would make me misty-eyed, you know, like, you know, and, you know, they have sex and stuff.
You know,
you're take a shot. Take a shot. I said, you know, God help us all.
Yeah. You'll go back and see how many times you've said that.
I know. Like 14 by now. Probably just the first time we noticed.
Oh, I noticed. I was just waiting for the right time. Let you do it more.
Okay. Typical setting me up.
Setting me up. You set yourself up. I just let go.
I had another page here. Where did it go? Oh, okay, cool. Because I still didn't want to get into the King stuff. I wanted to save King for last. Because there's so much to talk about there.
Oh, we can talk a little bit about The Fault in Our Stars.
Okay, yep. That's John Green book, The Fault in Our Stars, young adult, you know, basically a Hallmark type story. The girl dying from cancer who falls in love with the boy dying from cancer. Like he's supposed to be recovered, but he ends up dying before her. Yeah, because it reappears in like he says, he's like, my MRI lit up like a Christmas tree or whatever the test he had. But it's really, really sweet, really touching. Really, like, I've listened to the audiobook once or twice. That movie makes me cry. I forget the name of the actress in it, but she was also in Divergent. Actually, the boy who played August is also in Divergent. He plays her brother in Divergent. Oh. Yeah, so the love interest plays her lover in another. Yeah, love interest plays her brother in another movie. I didn't know that at the time. And also, I think it turns out that same actor was in the first Dream. Trying to make sure I remember. I want to say the first remake of Carrie, but it could have been the 2013 version. No, it was the 2013 version of Carrie. Yeah. Sorry, I got confused. I like my Carries. I like the second one the best. the second version, not Carrie the Rage. No, that one sucked. So, what did you want to say about The Fault in Our Stars?
Made me cry.
Oh.
And very few movies do that, but it did make me cry because you come to the end and he's like, well, I'm not in remission anymore, and she realizes that she's made it through.
Yeah, so far she's made it through. She's not in remission. She's still dying. She's still
dying, but she realizes that it's going to happen to him so much quicker.
Yeah, and then he goes on this huge self-pity phase, and she goes up. The scene that always got me was when she went in on him because she like takes him out to have a nice little picnic where he brought her to tell her they were going to Amsterdam. And she's like, you know, you keep saying you want to leave a legacy and you want to have this epic love and this and that. And she's like, but you know what? You're not gonna have that. You know,
Mhm.
she's like, you have your family, what you've got, your friends, and you've got me. And I'm sorry if that's not enough for you, but it's enough for me. And she gets really pissed off. You know, she's like, I don't want all this stuff. I just wanted you, and you're being an asshole, is basically, you know.
Mhm.
And then the scene where she's talking to her parents about the fact that she's gonna die,
Mhm.
because she knows August is really close to the end by then, and she wants to leave, and her mom's trying to make her stay.
Yeah.
And to get in that fight, and she's like, "You're not gonna have a little girl anymore. I'm sorry, you're not gonna be a mom anymore." You know, because she remembers when she went to the hospital one time, she was really close to death at that point, and she overheard her mom crying and saying, "I'm not gonna be a mom anymore." And her mom never realized until that moment that she heard
about
her.
it.
Yeah. It's just. Yeah, it's a relationship story. You know, it's a drama relationship story. It's just really, it's corny and syrupy, but really real and sweet. And because she's like 17 years old, it's heightened.
Yeah.
Because, you know, everything is heightened when you're that age. Like, you think it's the most passionate, and, you know, teenagers are really passionate. That's
Yeah.
why the stories are always so overblown.
Right.
But when you're dying, and this is all you're going to have.
Yeah.
Like, and there's also that speech when she says, you know, when I went to the hospital, the nurse asked me how bad my pain was, and I couldn't speak, so I showed her 9 fingers, and she told me how strong I was when I was recovered because I called a 10 a 9, and she said that's not why I called it a 9. I called it a 9 because I was saving my 10. The death of August was my 10.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and it's just automatically Niagara Falls, you know.
I love them.
Oh yeah.
Still haven't read the book, but
It's on Libby.
Oh,
Yeah,
I'll
it's
have
on
to.
Libby, so you'll be able to listen to it. It's a good audiobook.
Mm.
By the way, Libby is a library app for your phone. You just plug in your library information and you can take out books or audiobooks. So yeah, I'm not, you know, I'm not sponsored by them or anything, but I love it. So
Yeah.
I'm plugging it.
Yeah.
It's completely free and you don't have to buy the audiobooks, but you get them for 14 days. You can renew them. I don't know if you can renew them if nobody's waiting, but you can renew them. So, like, I'll often get a book and it'll say 1 person waiting or 5 people waiting.
Chris has someone there that say he's not going to get it for like a year. It's like,
yeah,
really?
like super
Yeah.
popular books. Like,
I'll just wait the year, I guess. Really.
Yeah, I'm waiting about 18 weeks for certain books right now. But like then there are books where I'm like, oh, I can listen to any of the Hunger Game books. Like they might not all be there at once, but I'll be like, if I have nothing to listen to, I'm like, oh, I'll go listen to Carolyn McCormick read Mockingjay. That's there right now. Like there's always a copy there. Almost never not there.
Mm-hmm.
Or if I just feel like listening to Twilight Eclipse, I can go see if that's there or listen to one of the other 3, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So, and the host has been there a lot, so that's made me happy. Unfortunately, 11/22/63 is still really popular right now, so I have to wait like 6 months for that one if I want to listen to it again.
Yeah.
But I mean, at least that one I can just run down to my library. I could also ask Library for the Blind for that one, but they don't have the commercial audiobook. I hate the reader for that one. Who else do we have? Oh, Sherilyn Kenyon. People might know who Sherilyn Kenyon is. Well, it seems like mostly guys are watching right now. 2 guys and a chick, so I don't know. Well, 2 chicks and 2 guys. But Sherilyn Kenyon writes erotic fantasy, like romances and erotic fantasy. I had never heard of her, but I bought this book called Fantasy Lover because it was like, okay, romantic fantasy. I like that stuff. I was still reading stuff that had a lot more sex in it at the time.
Mm-hmm.
You know, now I'm like, give me plot, but then I didn't mind if there was more sex mixed in. But this one was like, well, it's a perfect guilty pleasure because it's about a dude who is cursed to reside in a book. Okay?
Okay.
Like he's a demigod who's the son of Aphrodite.
Okay.
And because of something he did or supposedly did, he was cursed to reside in a book, and women could summon him to be their sex slave for a month.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay.
And because of his curse, every time he was summoned, he is driven, like curse compelled, to satisfy the women and satisfy himself.
Mm-hmm.
So one of the only ways to break that curse was to go the entire month ever without coming himself.
Mhm.
But he's constantly being driven to come.
Mhm.
So,
Yep.
But, this is obviously a love story about this one girl who ends up being given the book, not knowing what she's into, thinking she's playing a funny game because her best friend gave her this book and this guy is suddenly there.
Mhm.
And they end up falling in love and she ends up breaking his curse and all that. But it's fun. I mean, you meet Eros, you meet Psyche, you meet Aphrodite, you meet Priapus, who's the instigator or the antagonist of all this because he's the one that set him up. He meets the other gods at a diner with a girl, and I think that they were with another human. I can't remember, but they're like, "Oh, so what was your crime?" He's like, "Hubris." They're like, "Ooh, that's a bad one." But the main character, the girl, she's like, "What was your crime?" And he's like, I think he said I sacked or I raped or something. I can't remember which word he used, but it was like one of those ubiquitous. Is it ubiquitous? Is that the right word? Ubiquitous terms. Like it could have mean like sacked and I pillaged. I think is what he said. He said I pillaged Alexandria. She's like, you got cursed for eternity for destroying a city. He's like, Alexandria wasn't a city. Basically, I think he had sex with somebody in the temple of Aphrodite, or something like that, and that's and he was one of those. He had another certain famous. I can't remember who. It might have been Hercules or one of the others, or Perseus or something. He had another demigod's backstory in the book, essentially.
Mm-hmm.
It's really funny because at the very end, he's been released, he's human and all that. He's still a demigod. She gives birth to twins. And Aphrodite shows up and she said, "Can I grant them a gift?" They're both like, "No."
Yeah, no.
Because she was the one that cursed him in the first place.
Yeah.
His mother cursed him. So, I mean, that's just a little, guilty pleasure I had, or a little erotic fantasy. I read a couple of other Cheryl and Kenyon books, but like I said, a couple of them are good, and they were like that. They were more plot than sex, so I could enjoy them. But like her Hunter series, I got like 2 chapters into one of those books, and I was like, oh my god, I don't need to be reading about this guy feeling guilty for self-pleasuring himself involving hot wax and whips. I'm out of here. I'm out of here. That's way too extreme for me. Thomas Harris and Silence of the Lambs. I mean, I know you've seen the movie. I read the book. I listened to the audiobook. I have the unfortunately abridged version, but it's still read by Kathy Bates, which is phenomenal.
Kathy Bates is great.
Yeah, and I could barely recognize her voice in it. She's a lot younger when she read it. So it's like closer to her Misery Dolores Claiborne days.
Mm-hmm.
And, well, we know Andy likes it. Andy's, talks about all the movies. You read that. You watched his whole review series with me.
Yes, I did.
Of those movies. I've read all the books, but Silence of the Lambs has a special place in my heart. Just the book itself, never mind the movie, but yes, the movie does too. All the movies, all the books, I love them, but Silence of the Lambs has a special place in my heart. And I always wish that the scenes that stuck out in the book, I wish were in the movie.
Mm-hmm.
Because like there was another inmate in those cells with Hannibal Lecter and multiple Megs that they mention, and then he comes back in the movie Hannibal because she goes back to the state institution after it's been abandoned, and that guy's come back because they've released him. He's just a criminally insane dude who they had nowhere to put him, so he was homeless, and that was the only home he knew. So he went back to the building when it was abandoned. And she ran into him, and she remembered a conversation she had with Lecter, so she was able to talk him out of basically potentially attacking her. It was fun. I liked that one. I don't know what to say about the book, though. I mean, I love the book. I can't go into details. Most people know the story already, so
yep.
It's more fun when I can explain the story because then it's not like I'm not drilling things people already know into their brains. Did you mention all your stuff here already?
Those are notes for you.
Okay. Did you want to talk about your Nora Roberts book?
No.
Okay.
Jonathan
Kellerman?
I do like Jonathan Kellerman, and I do like the Alex Delaware series. I don't even know if he's written much else. I think he's written a few more things. But
You said he is a psychologist, right?
I believe he is a psychologist because some of what he is published for is like textbook type stuff.
Right. Okay.
So it's funny because I actually got into that because of my stepmother. I was staying at my dad and her house, and she says, I said, do you have a book I could read? And she gave me a Jonathan Kellerman book. And I was like, I like this guy. And I think more than liking him specifically, though, I like the detective that he works with, Milo Sturgis.
Okay.
He's
you mean that so there's Alex, whatever his name is, the main character.
And then there's somebody that he works with all the time. It's like he calls in as a consultant.
Okay, so you like a side character more than the main character.
I do like one of the side characters more than the main character.
That's okay. That can happen.
Mhm.
I mean, I love the Dresden Files, and God knows I love Harry. But there are some side characters where I'm like, I really wish I could follow them more.
Yeah.
Like there's a character, Thomas Wraith, who's in Incubus.
Mm-hmm.
And forget the Incubus qualities that he has. So there'd be a lot of sexy stuff involved. But it'd be like, I love Thomas.
Mm-hmm.
And you do actually get to follow him in his short story, but unfortunately that short story just isn't very good. It's like there'd be so much fun for some of these. Like, can I follow Mab, the Queen of Air and Darkness, for a while, please? I just want to see what she does when he's not looking. Probably just being terrifying, you know. Or some of the people on the Wizards Council.
Yeah.
Or Toot. Let's follow Dewdrop Berry for a couple of days. I need something to drink. I've been out of tea for like a half hour. My throat needs lubrication. Is there a favorite version of anything you have that's filmed to like book to film?
Let me think about that. I was not that impressed with the Jack Reacher that they did.
Okay.
The book, I don't know, the Lee Child's book with the Jack Reacher character.
Okay. Yeah.
One of the reasons I wasn't that impressed is I have nothing against Tom Cruise, but in the books, this man is like 7 feet tall. And let's face it, Tom Cruise is not 7 feet tall.
Yeah.
So he just kind of, I'm like, well, that kind of blows it for me because he doesn't look anything like the.
Well, that makes me think of when they made the movie Alex Cross, and I can't remember the name of the actor who plays Alex Cross in that movie, but it's not Morgan Freeman. It's somebody else who's like built like a tank. And yes, Alex Cross is meant to be more of a football player build, but I thought that Morgan Freeman was perfectly acceptable, you know, as a portrayal, not just because he's an amazing actor, but his build was just fine. There was nothing not intimidating about it. And, you know, he's just more of an elegant man, Morgan Freeman. Yeah. So it would be like Alex Cross is just carrying himself differently. Big deal. Mm-hmm. But the guy who plays Alex Cross in Alex Cross, I was like, that would be Samson. That would be his brother from another mother, Samson. Yeah. In my opinion. It's like, because Samson, he's like the Andre the Giant of black DC cops. You know what I mean? Yep. So he's the one you could see him calling Alex Sugar and, you know, bringing him into those big old bear hugs. Yep. Detective John Samson. It's like, he should have been played by Michael Clark Duncan when he was alive. Right? Yeah, it's like, that would have been Samson. Yep. So I didn't have a massive problem with the movie Alex Cross, except it was just a stylized, convoluted piece of mess. Mm-hmm. Matthew Fox was not a great bad guy in that one. He did better in Vantage Point, and we all know Vantage Point is a hot mess. Although it's a guilty pleasure of mine. I'm not knocking it. We got Mo saying it was. Oh, thank you, Tyler Perry. Yeah, from the Medea guy. Yeah, I knew it was somebody I knew or knew of, but I couldn't remember who it was. I only saw the movie itself like once. Mm-hmm. It's like, because let's be honest, I was comparing him to Morgan Freeman, who played the role twice. You know? Yeah. I'm like, he has over 17 Alex Cross books. You could find somebody to play this role better, and you don't have to. Is that supposed to go out there? And I don't even think they made it a story that's from the books. I think it was just an original story that they made with the characters. Mm-hmm. I could be wrong. It could be a book I never got to. Because, like I said, I gave up after like book 14.
What?
Nana Mama wasn't dead yet. She was 108.
She's still alive.
Yeah. Like 27. Nana Mama's still alive. I love Nana Mama to death. It's like, yeah, she would have been played by Ruby D. Williams. By Ruby D. You know? It's like she should have been played by Ruby D right there. You know who Ruby D is, right?
No, I don't.
No, okay. She played Mother Abigail in The Stand.
Okay.
But I mean, she had old woman makeup back on in that one. She was also in Baby Geniuses. Those are the things I know her from. She's passed away, unfortunately, but it's like she didn't last as long as Nana Mama. Just
Nana Mama's gonna live forever because he doesn't know how people would react.
Yeah, Nana Mama. Just so people know, Nana Mama is Alex Cross's grandmother.
Mm-hmm.
She basically raised him and John Sampson after his parents died. So Nana Mama is a great grandmother. And she is still kicking after everything that's been going on. I mean, after being taken hostage, pistol whipped.
And I think at one point they tell her she has like heart failure or something, and she's still alive or something.
That woman
it's something with the heart.
She is maybe a heart murmur or something. That woman never gonna die. I think James Patterson just likes her too much.
I think he loves her so much he can't kill her off.
Like you can destroy a relationship in the Women's Murder Club that you spent books and books and books building up and getting me interested in, and then you just rip that out from under me. Like 2 books into their marriage, you take that away from me. After like 11 books of them dating. But Nana Mama can't die of old age. You know?
Yeah.
Are you afraid you're going to kill your real grandmother or something? What is going on here?
I shouldn't have stolen his popcorn.
Oh, I don't think he's going to even notice.
Probably not.
Okay. Jonathan Kellerman's wife and son also are authors. And you said you read one of his son's books.
Yes. A little hard to get used to because he's a playwright first. He doesn't generally... He had just gotten into writing books.
Okay.
He's mostly a playwright. Okay. So a lot of it...
What's his name?
Jesse Kellerman. And the one book I read by him was called Trouble. And pretty interesting. I mean, he is a not a medical student. He's like he's a resident at a hospital. Okay. And he is walking home one night and he sees this woman being attacked, and he stops and basically he kills the guy by accident, trying to defend her.
Okay.
And after that happens, he's like touted as a hero. Everybody's like, "Oh my gosh, he's so great! He's a hero." Mm-hmm. And the woman that he saved comes back and they start a relationship, but it's a very dysfunctional relationship.
Go ahead.
And there's a lot that happens through that. He gets involved with, he's doing his psych rotation, and so he gets involved with learning about mental health issues and stuff like that. And he realizes that this girl who's essentially stalking him, but they're kind of together because he lets it happen.
Benignly stalking, I take it, right? Like not hurting him, stalking.
No, she's not hurting him, but she just keeps showing up. And
she's a persistent bugger.
Yeah, she's quite persistent. So, the book has a lot of twists and turns, and at first he can't figure out what her real name is because she gave a fake name.
Okay.
And then he finds out who she really is. And she's pretty out there. Like as a person who's out there, she's.
Does she have a diagnosis that you can remember? Or?
I think they finally give her one, but there wasn't one at the beginning.
Oh, okay.
But she's been taking out these ads for people to do like these torturous things to her because it's what she wants.
She's masochistic.
She's masochistic, and if there's no pain,
she's not happy.
She's not happy. So. He breaks it off with her, or tries to break it off with her, and they he realizes that he's in trouble, so he goes to his ex-girlfriend's house,
Mhm.
and he's staying there, and he's thinking he's safe there from this woman who's crazy and stalking him. And she turns around, and she, at the very end of the book, she takes the former girlfriend, and she takes her hand, the former girlfriend's hand, and has a gun and forces her to shoot her in the head.
Oh,
Like,
man.
so they're like debating whether or not to charge the girl with murder, because really she was, the woman forced her to do it. And in the end, she doesn't face any jail time. She they say, well, it's not your fault. But it was an interesting read, but kind of tougher to get through than most of the Jonathan Kellerman books, because you have to be used to it being written kind of in playwright style.
Yeah, so he's trying to learn how to transition from that, is what you're saying.
Yeah.
Okay. Want a piece of cheese?
Sure.
Sorry, I needed a snack desperately, guys. And I'm not just going to sit here and eat in front of her. That's just not nice. I'll sit here and eat in front of you guys, because you guys can go to your own damn snack cabinets and grab whatever you want, I've read a couple of the Faye Kellerman books. His wife writes detective stories as well. And the ones I've read are The Ritual Bath and Sacred and Profane. It's about a guy who ends up on a case. The Ritual Bath is the first one in the. I don't know if that character has stories before it, but this one starts. He goes to investigate a rape murder in an Orthodox Jewish community.
Okay.
Like inside of, I forget what it's called, but it's the building where they go to take their cleansing baths every week or whatever it is. They do a lot of their ritualistic stuff there.
Okay.
And he meets, I don't remember if she found the body or what the case was, but there's a woman that he ends up starting to form a relationship with, who's an Orthodox Jewish woman. And there's a lot of the, she's a widow, so she has kids. And it's a lot of the, you shouldn't be with him because he's not one of us.
Right.
And the case of he doesn't understand her because she keeps telling him, you need to understand, I'm not a prude, I'm not a zealot, I'm religious, I have my beliefs, I don't believe in sex before marriage or doing this or that, and I don't want to give those things up because those are part of who I am.
Right.
I'm not going to push them onto you and make them, she does want him to convert because because of her spiritual beliefs, she wants to marry another Jewish man.
Right.
And he does go through the steps to convert. I don't know if he ever finishes, because the last book I read, the books I've read of hers, they're mysteries and they do finish the cases. The steps are all there, but it focuses more on the relationship. So it's kind of like romance mystery versus mystery thriller / romance.
Right.
But it's all there. Another of the books involves him taking her boys on a camping trip, and she sends them with all this kosher stuff and everything, and he can't even get the boys to like sneak a little, anything. They're just so well behaved. And one of the boys goes off to do something by himself, and he comes across a body of somebody that had been murdered.
Oh wow. And
they have to deal with that, because he seems to handle it pretty well at first, but then it turns out he's pretty fucked up because of it. And
well, you have the initial shock, so
right. Thank you. So they're all right. I don't know if I'll read any of the other books. I mean, I was curious how the relationship would go, but how it was she was going to move back to where her parents were in New York, because this is out in California. And he doesn't want her to go, but he had decided, I don't want to be Jewish. Like they got into a fight, and he ended up going to see her, and they did end up making love. And she was still going to leave, and I think she did for a little bit. But I think she came back.
Okay.
I can't remember the details of the second book quite as well. I did really like The Ritual Bath, but the other one is more forgettable. Right. Because, it turns out she was the intended victim in the Ritual Bath the whole time and everything. So, that type of thing. Like, it was one of those unrequited love things where she was supposed to be the one coming out of the bath at the time and everything, but it was somebody else, and then she ended up showing up and scaring them away. So, that type of thing. So I do like. So the Kellerman family seems to be quite talented.
Yes.
I tried to listen to one Alex Delaware book, but it just didn't grab me. It could have been the reader's fault, though.
Mhm.
It's just like this. It really did read like noir.
Mm.
And Dean did warn me. He's like, if this is like noir storytelling, like Maltese Falcon ships.
Mm.
I'm like, I don't think I can handle that.
Mm.
And yeah, I mean, some of the other stories might not be that way, but the book I started in had that very deep, like almost modern noir, so like Sevens type of a feel to it,
Mhm.
except narrated, which was a hot mess for me.
Mm.
Like I said, it could have been the reader's fault instead of the author's fault. So now that I have my digital magnifier fixed, maybe I'll take it out of the library and try to read it or something.
Yeah.
Maybe reading it myself is the better deal in some of these cases. Like, I probably would never have read Dr. Stoker's Dracula the Undead, but I love the audiobook. And that's not a good book by any means. It's more like Dr. Stoker, the great nephew of Bram Stoker, decided to write the sequel to Francis Ford Coppola's Dracula, you know?
Okay, well,
go.
yeah.
Stay over there. You know why.
Yeah.
Don't know why he has to do that. All right, now we're getting to the big guns.
Stephen King.
There's our Stephen King list, which is enormous. And we can talk about adaptations and books and all that stuff, because Stephen King is the one author we actually have in common.
Yeah.
And we've actually liked different books by him versus all the same books. Like, she likes Lacey's story. I don't.
Yeah.
I'm like, I had to take that book out of the library 6 times before I could
I was like, I hate
finish
that
it.
book. I'm like, I'm sorry, I love that book.
I can appreciate it now that I finally finished it.
Yeah. Well,
But
it does take a while to get to the ending, and the ending is very.
It was not enough of one thing, and it was too much of another for me.
Yeah.
I'm like, if it's going to go like Rose Madder, it needs to go Rose Madder. It can't just barely touch it, you know?
Mm-hmm.
But we'll get into the comparisons and stuff. Why don't you talk about Lacey's story?
Lacey's story was
Lacey's story.
I believe it's Lacey's story.
It's spelled Lyces, I swear. Lisey.
Yeah, but
yeah.
but they say it Lacey's. I don't know why.
Yeah, they make a point of pronouncing it in the book at some point. Finally.
Yeah. But
it's Montgomery Jack, by the way, just in case you were wondering.
Okay. Trying to remember everything that happens in the book. Not quite everything, because I want to.
Do you want me to pull the summary up?
Yeah, pull the summary up, and
Just
that'll give me enough to go. Okay, now I remember.
It's the widow of the. Was he a writer or was she the writer? I forget. Or if they were both.
He's the writer.
Okay.
He's the writer.
Okay. Just trying to help, because like I did read it, so I remember a bit about it, but it wasn't so bad that I just forgot everything about it. It just wasn't for me, you know. Because in almost everything, I think Stephen King is quite good, even if it's a story I end up hating. Okay, there's Lacey's story.
Do you want me to read it, or do
you can read it. I was just trying to pull it up for you.
Okay, thank you. Let's see. Lacey DeBuscher Landon lost her husband Scott 2 years ago after a 25-year marriage of the most profound and sometimes frightening intimacy. Scott was an award-winning best-selling novelist and a very complicated man. Early in their relationship, before they married, Lacey had to learn from him about books and blood and bulls.
And what?
It says bulls. I think that's a typo.
I can't see where it is. Right here. Yeah, it does say bulls. BOOLS. It must be a typo. It's gotta be. Well, unless it was one of their code word thingies, that's possible.
Okay.
Because if you remember that, I do remember they had the riddles and the chain riddles.
Yeah.
Where he would leave clues all over the place for her. I remember that about the character.
That's true. That could have something to do with that. I was like, am I reading them right? I'm like, that's a word? Okay. Later, she understood that there was a place Scott went, a place that both terrified and healed him, that could eat him alive or give him the ideas he needed in order to live. Now it's Lacey's turn to this has typos in it. I'm sorry. Scott's Demons. Something about Scott's Demons, but
Face.
yeah, maybe face Scott's Demons, I think is what it's supposed to say. Lacey turned to go to Booyah Moon, what begins as a widow's effort to sort through the papers of her celebrated husband becomes a nearly fatal journey into the darkness he inhabited. Perhaps King's most personal and powerful novel, Lacey's story is about the well springs of creativity, the temptations of madness, and the secret language of love.
I call bullshit. Now, there are plenty of other Stephen King stories I could say, no, that's probably closer to the truth. But that, yeah, most intimate. Bullshit, mama. Playing bullshit. Okay, hang on. We got a couple of other comments here. We got Epic Candle. Lacey's story feels and reads like a really specifically weird fever dream, or a dream you have on an uncomfortably hard night where it's not the usual dream you have, but not a nightmare either. It kind of makes sense when you're in there reading it, but after you're done, you're not entirely sure what the hell even happened. Thank you. I could not agree more. I really, she nailed it.
Yeah, she did. I do like being confused. The more convoluted the story, the happier I am.
Yeah. There are good aspects. Like I remember there are scenes where there's somebody stalking her, attacks her. I don't remember all the details. There are things, because it's so close to the gunslinger stuff, like because her husband did end up going into a place like the Territories, but it also has a lot to do with Rose Matter. Because Rose Matter is about a woman who leaves her cop, who's an abusive husband, and buys a painting that ends up basically coming to life, and she goes through a journey involving that. And this feels a lot like that, because her husband went to another dimension in Lacey's story, and Rose goes to another dimension in her story. And they both have people come and attack them, and something about the other land has to do with them getting through it. So they're very parallel stories, but I just didn't like Lacey's journey. I liked Rose's journey a lot more.
Right.
So, and supposedly they're making both movies.
Both of them?
Yeah, eventually. So, I mean,
I guess we'll see.
I don't actually remember seeing it on IMDb when we were looking today. But I think they're at least in talks for it, so maybe now it's just rumored. Or there have been canceled projects too, so all I really remember, I remember the beginning when she's got all his books like lined up on the floor or something like that, and she's followed a bunch of his clues. I remember something about going to a home, like an elderly home, maybe a parent or something like that. And I remember somebody attacking her, but I don't remember any of the details. And I remember her going into that other realm and there being like a pool and an amphitheater seating, and her husband was there.
Yes.
And that's all I really remember. All the rest of the details, like she says, like a fever dream you can't quite remember.
Yep.
So she did hit the nail on the head with that one. She's absolutely right. Rose Matter I really liked because of all the details for the characters. And that was a very personal journey of something I can understand, even if I've never been in an abusive relationship.
Right.
Probably because I've read so many stories about abusive relationships and seen all the movies and TV shows and, after school specials and lectures and all the people I know who've been through shit, So I understand it from a spectator's point of view, of course. I love the Dark Tower series. I still haven't seen the movie The Dark Tower, which, as I understand, sucks, but I will try to watch it on its own merit someday and just see if I like it as a movie. Because I have heard if you just look at it completely separate from a Stephen King gunslinger story, it can be popcorn entertainment at least. But I don't know. It's just like, the minute I heard a black guy was playing the gunslinger, I was no longer in. And it wasn't because I'm racist, it was because, well, it turns out they eliminated the black female character. But I was like, but the dynamic doesn't work anymore. Because there's a black woman with multiple personality, and one of them, well, they're both really racist. the black women are really racist, but you know, they have issues with the gunslinger because he's white.
Mm.
You know, so like the dynamic doesn't work anymore. Of course, you know, they made a lot more changes after that, and I understood it better, but I never got warmed up to it again.
Mhm.
It's like, I don't care if the gunslinger's black. You got to make somebody else white to bring in the, you know, to make it work. That's what I thought at the time. You said you haven't read all the books. You haven't even read any of the books yet, right?
No, I haven't.
So I won't get too far into it, but it's the dark fantasy, science fiction, western adventure.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's just so fun. It's got everything. There's homages to everything in there. Like there are weapons they call sneeches, but you know, it's like somebody misunderstanding the language because they're called HP sneeches, and they're JKR number.
Mhm.
So they're snitches.
Mhm.
Or well, yeah, catch the little snitch, yeah, whatever. You know, they're grenades. They're flying grenades, but they're modeled after the Harry Potter,
Mhm.
you know, Quidditch thing. They are snitches, I think, right?
Mhm.
And they're just a lot like there are robots in them, and they're described as basically C3PO. I'll make sure I get it. C3PO.
Mhm.
And there are lightsabers, and there are, you know, just all these different homages to other things. There's the Emerald City and the Rainbow of Oz, and all that different stuff shows up. I think they all put on ruby slippers at some point. It's like there are just so many little. He throws everything in there. It's like, and the kitchen sink. He didn't even forget the kitchen sink.
What? Can I have a soda?
Yes, you may have. Did you finish your juice in that big cup?
No, he did not.
You should finish your juice, okay?
Wait, whoa!
Please don't yell. You may have a soda when you're done with your cup of juice. I'm
walking.
starting to have issues here. Under the Dark Tower.
11/22/63.
I love that's my number one favorite book of all time. Has been since I read it for the first time. Love the audiobook, love the book. I've actually read it because I wasn't legally blind quite yet when that came out. Not a big fan of the TV series that Hulu did. The J.J. Abrams directed with what's his face? What's his name that stars in it? Who played Oz the Great and Powerful? James Franco. James Franco, I think. It's not bad. It's a decent movie, you know, like miniseries.
Mhm.
But because I love the book so much, the changes they made, although understandable, were not the right changes to make, in my opinion. Because a lot of it is him by himself doing things and thinking things. But because of, you know, that wouldn't work for a television medium, so they had to have that externalized somehow. So they gave him other characters that were in on his secrets and stuff.
Mhm.
And it took away the tension and dynamic of it. And you don't know this, but maybe Andy remembers. When they did the TV series Hannibal, and they got to the Red Dragon series, in the book, Francis Dollarhide is a sexual predator.
Mhm.
You know, in the TV series, and they got to that storyline, they decided to take the sexual predator element out of it.
Mhm.
And they were really highly commended for that, about just taking away the rape, basically, and just making all the other aspects remain.
Mhm.
They did the exact opposite. And I mean, I know you're just starting the book,
Mhm.
but in the series, she talks about the things her husband did to her, and they're not the same things that happened in the book.
Okay.
Because in the book, the love interest is still a virgin, even though she was married for 4 years.
Mhm.
In the TV series, they just decided to make it more explicit, horrific, and say that she was assaulted by him many times during their marriage.
Mhm.
And I'm like, that's just cheap. You know? I mean, I'm not one of those people that say, don't put a rape story in there. It does nothing for the blah, blah, blah. You know, I mean, there are people out there who get really offended. They put it in there for a cheap, sympathetic thing.
Mhm.
It felt like that's what it was doing with this one.
Mhm.
You know, I'm not usually one of the people that will do that. I defend rape stories, essentially.
Mhm.
But it felt wrong to do that with this character.
Mhm.
And yeah, I know I just gave away some things, but whatever. I mean, barely anything. I gave one detail away of a female character. So it was still a decent adaptation, and I understood they had to make some changes, but the changes they made just made the main character more of an asshole. So that was one of the big problems I had with it. What's the next one?
Let's see, The Girl Who Loved Tom Gordon.
Oh, I love that book. I would love to see that as a movie, but it would be a very hard one to do because it's a little girl who's lost in the woods.
Yeah.
I mean, she comes across some things, like it turns out it's a supernatural horror, you know? Like that she's being stalked by something that's not animal or human. It's something else. But you also don't know for a fact if it was or not, because she's very sick by the end of the book by the time she actually comes across something. But all it is her in fever dreams. It's sickness and being lost in the woods. And she has her Walkman, and until the batteries die, she's listening to the Red Sox games every night that they're on. And her favorite player is Tom Gordon.
Yeah.
So, and by the way, there is a children's pop-up book of The Girl Who Loved Tom Gordon. That's got to be interesting. Never seen it, but I've heard it exists. Anne Heche read that one, the audiobook, and that's one of the reasons I fell in love with it. So some of these Stephen King audiobooks I listened to when I was pregnant with him. I don't know if that explains anything about him, but I doubt it. But like, you know, The Shining I tried to listen to when I was heavily pregnant with him, so I kept falling asleep. So obviously not the most thrilling of books. Good book. I love the miniseries, the Stephen King miniseries with Stephen Weber and Rebecca De Mornay and Cortland Mead. Screw all the haters. Screw the fact that it's very dated in many ways. I hate Stanley Kubrick, so fuck that. It sounds like I hate the Stanley Kubrick version because it's Stanley Kubrick, or because it's not faithful to the original. No, it's just not that good to me. You know, yes, it's unfaithful. Jack Nicholson was the wrong guy to play that role. They shouldn't have adapted it the way they did. I mean, it's an opinion. Opinions, not facts, as Andy says.
Yep.
And he said it many times in that review you and I watched today.
Yes, we did.
And but yeah, I mean, the miniseries was truer because Stephen King was behind all of it. But I also liked the acting better because I hated Shelley Duvall in the original. It wasn't just not liking Stanley Kubrick films. It wasn't being unhappy with the direction it went in. I didn't like the acting, you know. Which I believed, even when it was badly acted in the miniseries, I believed it more. It felt more real because it wasn't over stylized. You know, and I can feel somebody boring holes into me right now. I have no idea if Dino is still there, but if he's anywhere near his buddy Ted, he's probably glaring daggers at me right now, trying to kill me with thoughts. Opinions. Opinions are like assholes. Everyone has one and they all stink.
Yep.
What's next? I gotta stop taking that up from out in front of you.
Dolores Claiborne.
Oh, we both like Dolores Claiborne. You want to talk about that one? You can talk about the movie and the book and what you liked and didn't like and all that. Because we both read it, we've both heard the audiobook, and we've both seen the movie.
I've heard the audiobook.
Haven't you? I thought you said you really liked the reader. Or is it just the voice of the way it's told?
I just like the way it's told.
Okay, my mistake then. I have heard the audiobook. It's read by the same woman who plays the sheriff's wife / deputy in Misery, the movie. If you remember her, well, this deputy would rather be under covers with the sheriff. You know, be at home under the covers with the sheriff. Her. Yeah, that old biddy, she read Dolores Claiborne.
Oh.
And she's so awesome. It's great. You should try and see if you can get it from the library. Eastford actually has it.
Oh, okay.
So if you're ever up by Mom and Pop's on a weekday, you should try and pick it up. The movie was really close to the book in most ways, except it's missing the Gerald's Game connection. Because you know what I'm talking about, right? I think you never read Gerald's Game, right?
No, I never read Gerald's Game.
But do you remember how when the night she killed her husband, she had that vision of the little girl?
Mm-hmm.
In Gerald's Game, it's Jessie from Gerald's Game.
Oh.
And she also has a vision of Dolores at the same time.
Interesting.
Yeah.
It is pretty cool how he has so many books and yet they connect in so many different ways.
And some of them in ways you never catch until like 20 years later.
Yeah.
Like, I've read this book so many times. How did I miss that one line about the turtle? Or the one single line where somebody just said "ka," you know? The Christopher Plummer character in the movie is kind of a combination of two characters from the book, but there's no detective, there's no investigation per se going on. There's no detective out to get her.
Right.
There was an ME that interrogated her when her husband died, and who obviously did suspect some foul play and that she might be involved, but she played it cool and got through it, and that was it. That was the end of that. Okay. You know, so there's no detective returning to try and right or wrong that he, you know, to not let her slip through his fingers again. There's no grown-up Celine, you know.
Yeah.
As you know, so. Why am I talking like you haven't read the book? I don't know why, but maybe for them. I have no idea. I'm trying to think of anything else other than the fact that Kathy Bates is phenomenal in that movie. I think that's my favorite role she's ever done. Ever. We'll take it, you'll be back.
I'll be right back, Jess.
All right. I'll slip over here for a minute. How's everyone doing out there? Other than me, I still got 2 other people watching. I'm assuming, Mo, you're out there. And I have a high suspicion that either Epic or Andy is still out there. I don't know who. Sorry about the small break. Been going for a while. Well, we still have some Stephen King to go through. It's like we're right here. We gotta go through down there and over here. Hi, Epic. Do you have you read other Stephen King? Do you want to talk about anything? You can talk about authors and stories you like. We are listening. I'm sorry about snacking on my cheese over here, but honestly, if I don't eat it soon, it's going to harden and go bad. Anybody out there like Monterey Jack? This stuff is good. Hello, Mo. I'm glad you're still here. Everybody out there, congratulate my girl Mo, because she is about to graduate school, some college, of course, in a few weeks here, with like a 4 point something average. So, yay. How bad is the lag now? Okay, so it looks like it's about 20. Not a lot, because King's characters tend to be so needlessly mean and awful sometimes that once I read one, it takes me ages to pick up another King book. That's fair. That's very fair. A lot of King's books can be very nihilistic. He has a lot of his stereotypes of the characters that are just mean. Like, you got your Ace Merrills in a lot of the books, you know, your mean, you know, switchblade, you know, greaser kids that want to cut you up and fuck your world. Got the abusive daddies. You got the monsters that want to eat kids. I mean, they're, you know, those are all there. I can understand wanting to get away from those. Doesn't stop me though. I like the dark and twisted shit. A few Dark Tower books. Under the Dome and Lisi's Story. His works are a bit hit and miss, and so far most I've read have been misses. All right, that's fair. We will be talking about Under the Dome. That's another one of my favorites of all time, not just Stephen King. Because I think my top books would be Susan Kay's Phantom. Oh, not in order. In order, it would be 11/22/63, The Host, Under the Dome, Susan Kay's Phantom. Those would be my top 4 in order of all time ever. I don't know what my other favorite books would be after that. I think after that it would be my favorite series. Like it would be the Dark Tower series, the D.D. Warren series, whatever it would be. Twilight would even be in there somewhere in the top 10 because I like Twilight. Screw people who don't. You've seen me in Discord. You know I'm a passionate defender. All that good stuff. Okay, I can see why he has such a good reputation, and his books and stories, they're good, but they're not my kind of books. Yep. Gotta take a shot. She said, Epic Candle said, somebody's gotta take a shot. I swear to God, this is gonna be a drinking game that's going to kill people slowly, one at a time. Every time somebody says, or any form of it. No, I'm teasing. I can some of his books are missed for me. Like, I don't like Lisi's Story very much. I can appreciate what I read when I finally finished it, but it was such a slog to get through. I don't think I'll revisit it anytime soon. But if I do revisit it, I might like it more. I'm not a fan of too many of his short stories, especially his older ones. But I do like plenty of them. I'm trying to think if there are any other full-length books. I've never read Bag of Bones. I couldn't get 2 chapters into that one. I couldn't get 2 chapters into Misery. Part of my problem with Misery is I went to read that one in middle school, and there are huge chunks of that book taken up by Misery's Child, the book that Paul Sheldon is writing for Annie Wilkes while he's being held captive by her. So you have these huge blocks of text that are all in caps to tell you it's his book that he's typing, and they're all missing the E, and they're all drawn in, like Annie Whitney filled them in, like she did in the, and it's a slog. I can't handle it. I mean, yeah, this is a guy who's been writing romance novels way too long and wants to write something else, but is being forced to conform to somebody else's whims. I actually remember a part of one of those passages. It's just always stuck with me. I'm like, they're in like Africa being tied to stakes smothered with honey, and they're surrounded by bees, and there are like cannibal people around them or something like that. So that's all I remember. I also remember that Annie Wilkes actually cut off his feet in the books instead of just hobbling his foot. His feet. She cut his feet off. Sweetheart, you're getting loud again. You need to tone it down, please. A lot more then, please. Do you have anything to say about Misery? I mean, I don't think you've read the book, but I think you've seen the movie.
I probably did.
Okay.
I don't know.
The other Kathy Bates movie?
I know. That's like the only thing I remember about it. I'm like, yeah, I had Kathy Bates in it. Yep, I like Kathy Bates.
Yeah, she's like 21.
Yeah.
That's fair. It's okay. Needful Things. I really want to see that movie remade because I love the Max von Sydow version of Leland Gaunt. The guy from The Exorcist, the priest from The Exorcist. I love Max von Sydow. He's one of my favorite older actors. But the movie itself, it holds very true to the spirit of the book, but there are some things that you're just like, I want to see an R-rated version. I want them to do something like they're currently doing with It.
Mm-hmm.
Except I don't know if they want to make 2 movies of it or just do a Lord of the Rings and make it super long. Mm-hmm. Because that's a tome, that book. It goes into all the stories, all the different ways he fucks with people. And I keep laughing about one of them because, have you seen Needful Things or read the book?
No.
No? Okay. Well, it's basically making a bunch of deals with the devil. He sells you things for favors. Oh. So it's a very malignant version of Lucifer.
I was just going to say, Lucifer.
Yeah. But there's a boy in it who ends up trying to kill himself after he does something horrible that leads to even worse happenings.
Mm-hmm.
Because all these people are doing him favors, but the crimes they're doing are fingers are being pointed to other people.
Mm-hmm.
So one person's doing this, but it's making it look like that church did it against this church, and
yeah.
But that boy's mother, she's this woman that she's like probably bigger than you originally were. She's a food addict and all that, and her best friend is like that, and they're always on the phone talking to each other and gossiping. He's fine.
Okay.
I'm like, no, that was a laugh.
It's hard to tell.
Yeah.
Sorry.
That was a laugh. But they're both really into Elvis, right?
Okay.
And they go into needful things, and like he sells them stuff like, oh, here's a piece of the ark itself, like Noah's Ark.
Mm-hmm.
And but everybody else sees it as something else. Like a guy buys a lucky rabbit's foot, and it's like this gorgeous, richly dyed velvet fur type rabbit's foot. But everybody else, it's a piece of rotting shit.
Oh.
So it's all illusion and glamour.
Okay.
But he has a couple of Elvis things. Like one's a velvet picture, I think maybe, or just a picture of Elvis, and one is like a pair of glasses like he wore.
Mm-hmm.
And the two friends bought one each, and they have a rivalry. And they both have the exact same fantasy about him, because when they touch these things, they have like these in-depth like physical fantasies.
Mm-hmm.
Like a guy touches what's supposed to be part of the ark, and he smells the animals, and he feels like he's on the waves and everything, So these girls experience being in the jungle room with Elvis in his bed and everything,
Mm-hmm.
So sexual fantasies. But at one point, one goes and touches the things, and her best friend is there getting pounded by the king. And then she ends up like, she goes to basically go get her best friend because he's hers, you can't have him. Goes to kill her best friend, and she's laying on the bed, like naked and everything, just smiles at her friend while having a good time with herself. And then she pulls out a gun and shoots her, while she's masturbating and all this. And they end up killing each other and stuff. And it's like all this weird fucked up shit. And I'm like, it doesn't have to go that extreme.
Mm-hmm.
But I want to see some of this shit that happens in the book.
Mm-hmm.
Some version of it that's more extreme than what happened in the Ed Harris movie.
Yeah.
It's probably one of my favorite King books. It's at least in the top 4, at least out of his individual stories.
Mm-hmm.
Did you read Under the Dome?
Nope.
No, I liked Under the Dome. That's, like I said, that's
And I saw the series, and I'm sorry I didn't like it.
I didn't either. I was okay with the first 2 or 3 episodes, and then I did finish the first season. But then I was like, no, I'm not going to watch after this. But it's nothing like the series.
Okay.
The series was a hot fucking mess. And I used to, at that time, I hadn't read 11/22/63, I don't think.
Oh.
I think I think that was about to come out, and I was about to read it. But Under the Dome was my favorite book of all time at that time.
Okay.
And the series came out, and I saw what a hot mess it was turning into. And I saw co-producer Stephen King.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, you are dead to me, sir. You put up with this shit. You are dead to me. So for a while, it was ugly. I was like, somebody take him behind the barn and shoot him because he's lost his goddamn mind. He has lost his goddamn mind. I had feelings, let me tell you. Like the first couple episodes were okay. They were reasonably close. They made changes, but I could live with them. And then they went out into limbo, kind of like the Game of Thrones series right now compared to the books. They just went over there. I can't quite see what it originally was from here, but I can almost wave to them. It was still aliens and stuff, but it was like, no, this just doesn't work. Oh, like in the novel, you're led into like the last 18th of the book before you discover this shit,
Mm-hmm.
Big Driver is a short story from Full Dark No Stars, as is A Good Marriage. And I don't remember where I put that.
That's on the other page.
Okay, that's all right then.
Yeah,
okay. Big Driver was on this side too, though. So I accidentally had it written down twice. Big Driver is a rape revenge story.
You're really into those, aren't you?
Very, very simple. It's a rape revenge story. A woman, She's a writer. She's given a shortcut to get home. Her ends up getting a flat. Guy pulls over to help her and then ends up assaulting her and leaving her for dead. And where he leaves her dead, there are a bunch of other ladies' bodies.
Mm-hmm.
And she ends up, getting home and deciding that she's going to go get revenge on this guy.
Mm-hmm.
And she does. And there's stuff involved with that. But it's one of his short stories. Lifetime made it a movie.
Yeah, well, you said Lifetime and movie. I don't know what to say about that. Not the biggest fan of most Lifetime movies.
Pretty bad.
Yeah.
There was one they made back when I was a kid. There are a few they made when I was a kid that were good that I loved, but I was a kid. So who knows how I feel now?
I had to take this away from myself.
Like I liked Victoria Principal Lifetime movies.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they all had the same kind of content to them though, so it makes sense.
I was kind of used to. At a certain point, I felt like if you've seen one, you've seen them all.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's
how I feel about the Hallmark movies. You ever hear of Blaze?
I've heard of it, but I don't.
Blaze was, I think it was originally a Richard Bachman novel of his.
Okay.
It was Richard Bachman. Yes, Richard Bachman. Sometimes I forget the first name he used as a pseudonym for some reason. It is a mentally delayed man. I'm trying to think of a movie you would have seen. It's basically Lenny from Of Mice and Men.
Mm-hmm.
If he was a bigger bald dude, okay?
Okay, but
just
the
like
same,
a big dumb bald dude.
Yeah, but with the same disabilities and the
more
same
or less.
More or
Yeah,
less.
very slow, very all that.
Mm-hmm.
And he has this partner. It turns out somebody he did know that's been dead, but you don't know he's. Like, you figure out something's weird, but you don't know the guy's actually dead, and he's kind of talking to his imaginary friend version of him. But before this guy died, they had planned to basically do a Lindbergh baby kidnapping.
Mm-hmm.
It was going to be the new crime of the century, and this and that, and they were going to hold the kid for ransom. But Blaze decides to do it on its own.
Okay.
And because of his mental capacity,
of course, he gets caught because.
I mean, I can't remember if he dies or not at the end. I want to say he dies, but maybe he gets caught and not dies. He gets hurt.
Mm-hmm.
But, he doesn't want to hurt the baby. But because he has no idea what the fuck he's doing, he's making all these mistakes, and the baby starts getting, like, really sick, and he doesn't know how to take care of him and stuff. And he's hiding away in a little shitty cabin in the middle of a blizzard with this sick baby, And he's made all these mistakes that the cops are coming after him. And you really feel for this poor guy because his backstory was that he was a perfectly normal, even accelerated kid until he was like 9 or so, And he had an abusive father. And one day he pissed his dad off, and his dad just kept throwing him down the stairs of their apartment building until he couldn't get up anymore. And that, set him back. He was in a coma for a while.
Yeah.
And it's horrifying because of what he's doing, and he's a criminal. His buddy was a very bad criminal. So it's very malicious of Mice and Men couple, But you also feel so bad for him. Like, you want him to get caught and have the baby be saved, but you don't want any harm to come to him. It's very twisted. It's like if they made this movie, I don't know what they would do with it. Because it's another one of those where he is primarily alone. But they pulled off Gerald's Game, which we'll get, but which we'll be getting to eventually here, I think. But The Outsider is one of Stephen King's newest books. It's kind of meh, but I thought I'd talk about it because it's a new one. Not many people read it yet, comparatively. It felt like it all over again, except more adults involved. Turns out it's not. It is what it seems, I guess. But the very beginning of the book is a bunch of police officers arresting a little league coach for the rape and murder of a young boy in their town. Okay. But he's like, but it couldn't have been me. I was in a teacher's conference 4 hours away overnight. Like this English teachers conference thing where we got to watch a lecture and have a meet and greet with Harlan Coben. There we go. Yep. The mystery writer. but there are 6 or 7 different people who have eyeballed him. You know, no, I can identify him. His face is very popular around town. We recognized him. We saw him with the kid. We saw him at the scene of the crime. You know, we saw him with blood on him. And it's connected to the Mr. Mercedes trilogy because one of the characters apparently, I haven't read Mr. Mercedes books yet, but one of the characters in that is heavily involved in this story.
Okay.
And it turns out that what they're seeing is basically something that can be a doppelganger. You know, and it can go so far as to imitate his DNA. So that's why there's been like hair and semen and blood and all that. That's his. Like fingerprints, all his. They got 79 perfectly matching fingerprints at the scene of the crime.
Wow.
Yeah. And unfortunately, the guy, you know, like a third of the way through the book, the guy's killed in front of the courthouse by an angry parent whose life has fallen apart because of this. Like, because one of his kids is the victim. His wife has a heart attack, and then you know, it's no, it's not. It's the kid's older brother.
Oh, okay.
But then you find out it's basically, you know, like a child eater. I forget what it's called. I think he's called the Basket Man in English, but it's like a Spanish. I think Stephen King drew from a real legend in Latino culture. But I could be wrong about that. But I think they called him the Basket Man in English. I just can't remember what the Spanish name for him was. And they're chasing the clock because they realize that another guy has been seen, but they know that guy's nowhere near there. So he's already getting ready to hurt another kid because they've already traced it back to somebody else who ended up dying in prison after being charged with a similar crime somewhere else in the country. And, you know, so it's kind of like It, but not It. And I didn't like the climax. Because the creature ends up having like a Renfield type character, and the big climaxes with that character versus the creature. Although there is, I mean, I don't remember the climax. I remember them walking in and talking to the thing, and I remember them pissing it off. But that's all I remember. Next thing I know, they're out of the cave, and the thing's dead. You know, it's like I don't remember the climax with the creature. I remember the build up to it. They're apparently making that a 9-part miniseries, so we'll see how that goes.
Which one?
The Outsider.
The Outsider.
Are you okay? Come have something to drink. Now. Thank you. You make noises like that and then just stop making noise. It's a little worrying. You start heaving like you have croup, and then all of a sudden you're just soundless.
Okay, Vinny.
Yeah, I was going to talk about insomnia, but it's actually kind of complicated for me to talk about. I'll try to talk about it, I guess. It's this old guy whose wife dies, and then he starts suffering from insomnia, and he starts seeing auras, and then he starts seeing these 3 little bald guys that nobody else can see, and he nicknames them after the three fates, I guess they're called.
Okay.
Like, you know, like in Hercules, the 3 old ladies, the fates. Yeah. Stay in here with that.
And that's not in here. Come on.
And they start being able to like suck some of the life out of other people, and they start growing younger and stuff like that. And it's heavy dark fantasy. But like there's a one of those 3 things. Like there's 2 that are benign, and there's 1 that's evil. And that he like goes into the lair of this thing at some point, and there's like connections to there's connections to the Dark Tower series because they talk about the Crimson King, but they also find they describe it as a little red shoe that once belonged to Gage Creed.
Okay.
And that's the little tiny evil boy from Pet Sematary.
Oh.
Yeah. Okay. So it's like there are all these connections.
Creepy children are like one of my biggest fears. I swear. Creepy children
do you have who's the creepiest kid in the movie for you? For me, it's Rhoda Pendleton from The Bad Seed.
I haven't seen The Bad Seed yet.
We can watch it sometime.
I kind of like the creepy one from Children of the Corn. The little one.
Isaac,
Yeah,
the preacher dude.
the preacher.
You know the dude who played him was 22.
I did not know that. He looks like a kid.
He had a condition that stunted his growth. Essentially, he still looks like he's like 15.
Oh,
Like today. Like, you know, he's got thinning hair and all that now, but he still look, you know, it slows down his growth essentially, or it halts his growth or something like that.
I did not know that. I'm sorry.
That's fine, but
did not know that.
He's meant to be a kid.
But
It's fine.
Yeah, I don't want to eat his popcorn.
He is intended to be a kid.
He is.
Yes, he's intended because in the book, I mean, you know how in the movie you see the massacre of the parents? Well, that takes place like a couple of generations beforehand in the book.
Okay.
So like 20 years have gone by.
Okay.
So it's all kids who were not even there.
Right.
You know, because they kill everybody when they turn 18.
Right.
So.
Thank you.
Yes. You're still hungry. I'll give you something healthy for yourself.
This is not healthy. This is just as bad as that.
Cheese?
Cheese isn't bad for you, but it's got fat in it like you wouldn't believe, at least the kind you usually get.
Yeah.
Once you get the little fat kind.
Okay, fair enough.
In fact, I was told not to eat anymore. I dropped a piece in his glory.
Sorry. I did not know that. If you had told me that, I would have offered you something else. I would have made you a happy juice.
No big deal.
The Talisman. You need to read The Talisman.
Okay, well.
That's Stephen King and Peter Straub.
Okay.
And it's about a little boy whose mother is dying of cancer. She's a former like B movie star.
Okay.
And it's connected to the territories, and that's the gunslinger. And he goes on a quest to find a talisman that can save her, and thus save her twinner in the other reality, who's the queen of the territories.
Okay.
Yeah.
That actually sounds interesting to me.
Yeah.
Some of his
There's like a werewolf involved and everything, who becomes like his best friend. Don't get too attached though.
What is it with you? And you always tell, like, you
I
tell me
say,
these
don't
things,
get too attached.
and you're like, don't get too attached. I'm like, apparently to anybody, because
they're all dead. I have to warn you, though. You know, it's not fair if I just throw you into the deep end.
Yeah, that's true.
Like the Vampire Diaries. I'm like, I'll tell you who you can get attached to, because even if they die, they come back.
Right.
But these people, don't get attached to them. They're not going to last the season.
At least it's not like your husband, who has a tendency to he kills people off that are still alive. You're like, isn't that person dead?
Yeah.
No.
Yeah. Isn't Ian McKellen? No, don't you dare say that. I will hurt you. I will cut you. I will cut you. Especially now that he's going to be in Cats. I will cut you.
He kills everybody.
I know.
Isn't that person dead? No.
No, that person's 34. They are very much alive, thank you. By your standards, you and I should both be in the ground.
Yeah.
The Langoliers. You see the movie or anything? Oh my god, I love that movie. I love that movie. I love the audiobook. I had the audiobook on cassette tape read by Willem Dafoe. He was phenomenal. He's the first I think it's one of the first audiobooks I ever heard. I think the other one was Red Raptor, but that one didn't last very long for me.
Oh.
Or was it Raptor Red? Or whichever way you put the words. I remember it was big at the time. Do you know the story of the Langoliers? Anything about that one?
Mm-mm.
These people on a plane basically wake up halfway. Well, I don't know if it's halfway through their flight, but everybody's disappeared, and it turns out they traveled into the past. And everybody that was awake on the plane when they went through the time warp basically was vaporized. But while they're there in the past, there are these creatures called the Langoliers that eat the past.
Oh.
So eventually they're going to catch up with them. It's more complicated than that, but that's kind of what it is. The movie is horrible, but it's so good at the same time. It's one of those
like just so bad it's kind of
amazing. Yeah. It's also kind of boring at the same time. It's weird. It's one of those weird, you know, like maybe I love the book so much that I can carry through the movie. Rose Matter, which we already talked about. Yeah. And the Gingerbread Girl. The Gingerbread Girl is being made into a movie, supposedly. They haven't made a cast or anything. They're in pre-production for that. It's a short story. It originally came out only on audiobook. Now I think it's part of one of the newer compilation stories that he's had come out. But it's about this woman who lost her baby to SIDS. And her husband's relationship is strained, and one of her ways of coping was to start running.
Okay.
And she would go for runs, and she would just start going for longer and longer and longer and longer runs. And eventually she got in such a big fight with her husband that she grabbed some cash and she had her dad set her up in their beach house, like just this little conch shell cottage. But it's like at the end of a dead-end road on an island that's seasonal for like big McMansion people, you know? So she's pretty much completely by herself on this island. You know, she has to cross a bridge to get to any stores, and there's a guy, it's a drawbridge, so there's a guy manning the bridge. You know, he's like one of her few contacts. But then one day she sees, the guy mentions to her, hey, the guy in, you know, she has nicknames for all the different mansions. The guy here is visiting. Have you seen him yet? You know, and she happens to pass that mansion. The gate's a little open. She sees the trunk of a car open. And she goes to investigate because it just looks weird. And there's a dead woman in the car, in the trunk. And she gets knocked out by this guy. It turns out this guy's like a serial killer. Like he keeps bringing all these nieces down. And he's killing them. Yeah. But everybody thinks he's just bringing these girls who are taking him as a sugar daddy down by car and then bringing them home on his yacht. That's the story, you know. They think he's just a player, and she's trying to escape him. So that's what that's about. Short story, you know.
Which they'll probably make a 4-hour movie out of.
Sorry, they could make a full film out of it because they could stretch it out a little bit.
Yeah,
but it would be intense as hell. It would be good. I think it would be good. Like Dermot Mulroney could play the serial killer or something, you know. I don't think. I'm trying to remember if he was supposed to be a good-looking guy or not good-looking guy in the book. I'd have to listen to it again. I can't remember honestly. And it's, you know, her overcoming everything because in the end she has to run to try and get away from him. You know, it's a lot of. I can't say fun. A book like that, it's so dark. You know,
it's fun to you,
but it's thrilling.
Yeah,
there we go. That's the word. Like these books are fun, but in a thrilling way, not in a hee way. They're adrenalines, you know. So I really like that one. I hope they make the movie. I hope it's good. But you know, with our luck in Stephen King adaptations, it probably won't be. And maybe if they get James Patterson to write the screenplay, you know, it is the type of story he could convert.
That's true.
Because it's his kind of a story in many ways. It's just missing the actual mystery element. It's more of the climax of one of his mysteries.
Yeah.
It's like, I think it's a 4-hour audiobook, if that.
Oh, well, that's not very long.
No, I mean, that's almost the length of a James Patterson novel, but it's a short story for Stephen King.
Yeah. I can't compare the two. I'm on page of 100, 11, 22, 62. Like 3 things have happened.
Yeah. Like, I'm on page 100. I'm like, oh, so he's still in the diner with Al.
Yeah, and I'm like, is anything else going to happen? We're in the diner with Al for
a lot is going to happen. One whole hell of a lot is going to happen. I think we had something else written, but I can't remember.
You had The Good Marriage right here.
Oh, A Good Marriage. Yeah, that's another Stephen King short story from the same one as Big Driver. It's from Full Dark, No Stars. A woman accidentally finds something in the garage that links her husband to a serial killer.
Okay.
She finds the IDs of victims of a serial killer.
Okay.
A serial killer who went underground for like 18 years, but has recently resurfaced. And it's basically one of those. I think Stephen King was inspired by like the story of the real BTK's wife. You know, the BTK killer. Yeah. Because she claims she never knew a thing, and all this stuff was happening in her basement. And it's one of those things like, well, what if that's true? You know, what would go through that person's head when they find out that their loved one is a serial killer, and how would they handle it, and all these other things.
Mhm.
So she's going through with her life, like she's got these kids, they're all grown because she's been married for like 35 years or something,
Mhm.
But it's another intense one. It's I don't remember if I still have the book. If I do, I can lend it to you, or you can take that one out of the library too. I know that's an audiobook. But the audiobooks aren't quite as good. I would say you should read those to yourself.
Okay.
But it's up to you. Maybe you'd like the reader better than me.
Usually you're spot on with me with readers. I'm like, some of them I'm like,
yeah,
I just want to go to sleep.
Yeah.
That's putting me to sleep.
Well, that was the thing about, I love Alan Cumming. He's an amazing actor, and he's fine at reading his own story, but his accent is so thick he loses me. So I'm not paying attention to what's happening.
Mhm. I'll never forget.
Or like Tim Curry reading some of Stephen King's shorts. I'm just like, can I go now?
I was in a psychology class my first semester in college, and it was a Pakistan. God love him. He was a wonderful professor. He was from Pakistan. It took me forever. Like I was like, oh.
Yeah, some people just don't have the right voices.
And some people you just can't understand, no matter how hard you try.
Yeah.
And he kept
William
saying,
Hurt, amazing actor, fucking horrible audiobook reader.
And he would say he said, eventually you'll get used to this. Yeah, I went through the whole class. Let's just say I didn't get used to that. I was just like, I'd go to other people and I'd say, when you were taking notes, what was that? And they'd be like, I don't know. I think it was this.
Yeah, Vinny's doctor now that Rachel's gone.
Mm-hmm.
He's from it's one of those African countries that it's like you might have heard of in passing once or twice, but it's not one of the major ones. So he's not like from the New Congo, or it's from a smaller country, I think. But it's like, thank God you actually speak some form of English, though.
Yeah.
Your accent is thick, but it's almost like it's closer to a Rasta accent, so it's easier to understand than, say, if you were from Uganda, or from India.
Yeah.
Goodness, I can never understand people from India. I love their voices, but their accents are just, especially if they've been there only a couple of years. It's like, I got nothing against you, but I can't understand you. That's my problem with a lot of telemarketers. A lot of telemarketers are in India.
Yep.
So I
hang up because I don't know what you just said.
Yeah, and I'm like, I'm sorry, I don't mean any offense, but can I get an American speaker, please? I can't understand you. You can't help me if I can't understand you. If I could understand you, you're a lovely person. I'd have no problem speaking to you. But I can't understand you over the phone. And the connection's never good either.
No, it isn't.
Oh, these poor people. I feel so bad when I have to act like I'm some sort of racist bitch because I can't understand them. And then you get the people that they can speak better English than that. It's like, lady, if you don't help me now, you're going to end up losing your job. Because you are just pretending you don't speak proper English. Like, you got the accent coming through. I can tell. But those are people clearly in America, because I'm like, where are you calling from? It's like, oh, I'm calling from Tennessee. And I'm like, well, then you should be speaking proper English, honey. Whatever. That's probably me getting too borderline racist or something. I don't know. But those are our books that we love. Those are, well, mostly the books I love. You couldn't think clearly, apparently, but we'll get there again someday.
I'll try. I'm trying to convince them that it really is a thing. They seem to think.
Yeah, doctors are idiots sometimes. They save our lives, but they can be real idiots when they just don't want to listen.
Yeah.
But, you also just, if you were passionate enough about certain books, I'm sure you would have thought of them better. They would have stuck in your head better.
Yeah, I guess.
But, even me, I'm like the D.D. Warren books. Some of them blend together. So it's hard to, And some of them are just so convoluted, it's hard to remember one specific plotline.
Yeah.
I mean, the one I told you about, the two sisters, I didn't even talk about the other sister who survived and is a part of it, but her part isn't so complicated. It's she got shot in the head and buried alive. She went into a coma. She woke up not remembering what happened,
Right.
Had no idea what happened to her sister. And suffered a lot of memory and motor skill and physical problems in the rest of her life. But she moved away, and now she's reuniting after like essentially 25 years with her sister because she went and married like a millionaire in New York and had a wonderful life and has been a widow for 6 months, So her story was nowhere near as complicated. It was her sister's story, but it ended more on the older sister's note. For whatever reason. Yeah, so. But yeah, I don't know how long we've been on. Good, almost 2 hours, I guess. So I guess we've been on for a while. I figured we'd be on for a while. Or is it 3 hours? Oh,
5:30, 6:30, about
almost 3 hours then.
almost 3 hours.
Huh, okay. So yeah, it lasted almost as long as I thought it would. Because I was like, once I get going on certain stories,
yeah, I can't stop.
Yeah, there are books I decided not to put down because I knew I would get into it. But there's some I'm so passionate about. I was just like, I have to talk about 11/22/63, even if I don't go into great detail, because it has an adaptation I can talk about. And then there are books like The Hunger Games or Harry Potter or other series I love, which I could get into all day, but I don't know if I have anything interesting to say about them other than the fact that they're good. So plenty to say, it's just nothing new.
Right.
I was like, if I'm going to talk about books, I'll talk about my favorite ones that less people are aware of. But I am such a King fan, we had to end with the King stuff.
Of course.
I know you're watching YouTube, but I'd better not be hearing any more Nightmare on Elm Street theme music. Thank you. You're 9. You can do without that.
It's just Baldy.
That wasn't Baldy. That was Freddy Krueger music. I know my Freddy Krueger music. Don't test me. It's my favorite horror movie series, like, ever. ever. I have the whole encyclopedia and everything. Don't test me, child. So, is there anything anybody would like to add? I still got Mo watching. I still got Epic watching, I believe. We can talk about other things. Maybe Epic knows some stories from around her neck of the woods that might not be so widely spread over here. Because we'd be interested.
That would be cool. I'd like to know about that.
Yeah.
Sounds awesome.
Of course, there's lag, so we have to wait now.
The lag doesn't seem as bad this time, though. It really doesn't. Because the other time it was like.
Let's see how long it takes me to take that sip of soda on this. Well, that's not going to help.
I was like.
Dude, now I'm taking the sip of soda.
Yeah.
So it's like 30 seconds, maybe.
Yeah, but the other time it was, I swear, it was like 5 minutes.
Give me soda.
Excuse you. You better stop that, or I won't let you have your soda. Did you finish your juice?
I can't.
No.
Put it in the fridge at least, okay?
Please.
If you put the juice in the fridge, I will let you have a soda. I can be lenient about that, and I'll give you the juice in the morning. Somebody, Epic says, new books or some other kinds of stories. Anything you want. Anything you want. We covered the gambit here, obviously. So.
I may not remember it, but I will read almost anything that somebody else suggests to me.
Yeah.
I don't remember it well, but funny thing is, it seems like the longer I get away from it, the more I remember about it.
You have long-term memory versus short-term.
Yeah, I have a long-term memory, but my short-term memory
Get
is like
in here with that.
Shot.
Now, let me see it. Let me see. Wait. I think, you see that? You're not opening that. You dropped it.
No, don't. You can't open
and
it.
you can't even open it now. It's broken.
They gave me a new one?
Yeah. But there's a reason you're not allowed to bring this stuff into the living room. Exactly that. Okay. I will let Epic type, and I will throw this out because he's not cleaning up after himself. He's probably trying for the most part to stay out of the way, like he knows he's supposed to. So I won't yell at him for not cleaning up. I'm going to let the dog out real quick.
Okay.
And when she answers, you have to go that desperately, or you just let me call? Huh? Which is it, Pupper? Which is it? Which is it? Ah! Oh, wait a second. Sit. Stay. Good boy. Oh, wouldn't it be nice if my next door neighbor stayed out for the night?
You mean your upstairs neighbor?
Uh-huh. It would be wonderful if they just stayed out for the night. Oh, I finally understand my mom's poor plight. I slept in my mom's bed last night, and holy crap, are they loud.
I say,
And they're loud out here, but...
I was like, I got the better end of this deal because I was actually able to fall asleep relatively
early. You fell asleep by 11, yeah.
Yeah, I was like...
Yeah, I fell asleep by midnight maybe, but they woke me up twice.
Mm-hmm.
Like, they don't make constant noise, but dear God, when they make it, they are not quiet or subtle. Oh. The Ray Shimura series. No, I've never heard of that. You haven't either, I take it.
Nope, not at all.
No. I know that Epic has vastly different tastes than I do.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm interested in hearing what she has to say about it, but based on what I know of her, I'll probably be like, that's not my bag. But I'm interested in hearing her opinion of it, certainly.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I mean, the John Green books, like The Fault in Our Stars, it's like, that's the one I like. I don't know about the Alaska one. I don't want to watch, I don't want to I don't want to read Paper Towns because I hated the movie,
mm-hmm.
you know, and those are the type of books that seem to get followed very closely.
Mm-hmm.
Like, The Fault in Our Stars was really close. I'll have to rewatch it to double check, but there was an important line missing from the movie that kind of explained the title, The Fault in Our Stars, a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
And it was when they were in Amsterdam and they were having that fancy dinner, the waiter says, would you like some stars? Because he pours some champagne.
Mm-hmm.
And he's calling the bubbles and everything stars. He says, tonight we have all the stars for you.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, they're two very young teenagers who are dying from cancer and
mm-hmm.
in love and all that stuff. So they're getting a little drunk on champagne because they can drink underage in Amsterdam,
Mm-hmm.
It's a detective novel series. Surprise, surprise. Well, now you do have my interest, dear lady. Please tell.
I'm interested. Detective story.
Detective story. I like this.
10 years from now, I'll even remember it after I read it. It'll take me 10 years to...
By then, you'll be suffering from early onset Alzheimer's, so you'll be screwed anyway.
I probably already am. I'll probably... No,
I'll be completely blind.
Yeah.
My husband will be completely deaf. You will have no memory. I don't know what you're suffering. Your husband's going to be suffering, but it'll be something.
Yeah.
Nothing yet. And Mo,
It'll just be like, this is the disabled.
Yeah. And Mo, if you're still out there, do you have a favorite manga, and can you tell us about it as well? Because we can keep this going a little bit longer, I think. Mm-hmm. It won't hurt us too much. We're having fun.
And we have to get up at what time now?
We gotta get up early, but we won't. We'll just if we're not done by 9, we'll shut it down.
Okay, well that's not bad. I thought I was thinking more like
because we'll have to get up by like
I should not eat this
6-ish.
popcorn.
Well, then don't give it to me. I'll throw it out. Or
Well, don't throw
Just
it
give it
out
to
or I
him.
will eat it.
there, you can't reach it all the way over there. Well, you probably could, but yeah,
I was like, I have Willy Wonka Sheila's spider arm. I can reach that. Yes, I can.
Vinny, come eat your popcorn before Auntie finishes it all on you.
I am a popcorn nut. I love popcorn.
I'm
Don't
sharing.
But she's already had most of the bag
Yeah,
by herself.
Yeah, so you can have what's left. Obviously, I shouldn't be stealing your food.
I made that for you, and she's eating it all. It's funny.
Well, you gave him 16 snacks.
I had to hold him over somehow. This kid can go through 16 snacks in 20 minutes
Don't
if
you
he
want
puts
it,
his mind to it.
You can have it.
You can
Just leave
have
it
it.
shut. Just leave it. It's a big old popcorn ball will fall apart everywhere on you while you're eating it. If you have even a remote interest in Japanese culture, it's an interesting series. The main character, Ray, is half Japanese who was born in the US, I think. So it's foreign, but not too foreign in a way. Okay. All right. Well, it's mystery, so I take it it's usually homicide, probably, right? Like, that's one of the things I liked about the Faye Kellerman book. It was learning a little bit about another culture, even though it was just Orthodox Jewish culture.
Mm.
You know, I mean, it was kind of like, oh, you're in the Jewish ghetto now. You know, it's what it felt like because all that racism was there.
Mm-hmm.
Like, people call it Jewtown, you know, and, you know, they're the same way about outsiders. Like,
yeah,
you're sure than me, you know, some of them talked a little bit more Yiddish, but.
Mm-hmm.
I like YouTube.
I'm not going to eat that right now because I'll make a mess.
Should probably not eat it at all. That's yours.
I don't
And I
want
brought that home for you. But it's very sweet of you. That's very
Okay.
He's being pushy about his sharing.
No, I want to share it with you. No.
Most often murder, yes, at least in the books I've read. Majority of the books take place in Japan, so there's a lot of cultural involvement. Fair enough. There might be a book I might have heard of one of those, and then just ended up choosing not to read or listen to that specific one, or I might not have been into it at the time I had the chance to listen to it.
Mm-hmm.
But for some reason, I'm thinking there was a book similar to that by Jack Kellerman. I think there's one of those. John Kellerman, sorry. I think one of them had a book where I think Alex travels to Japan for some reason. Or he has somebody, Japanese friend, or, you know, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
But I couldn't get one chapter into that one.
Mm.
Like I said, it's the really heavy mystery noir
Mm-hmm.
storytelling. It's like I couldn't do it. I felt like I was halfway between the Maltese Falcon and Seven.
Where's Enzo?
He's still outside.
Oh, he's barking.
Oh, that's him barking and not YouTube. Okay.
Yeah, I'm like, well.
I can tell. Maybe I'm just trying to train you that if you're barking and I open the door, I'm in trouble, I better get in. Sometimes he barks to let me know he's ready. Like he'll just bark once.
Mm-hmm.
But he could have barked and I wouldn't have heard him. I mean,
I initially thought it was YouTube, to be honest with you. Then I sat here and I'm like, no, I'm hearing it from
that side.
So
I couldn't hear him at all.
Yeah.
Like until you said, where is Enzo? And then I heard barking. Like it just made me more aware. So
Mm-hmm.
But I'll have to look that up. Keep it in mind. If you can send me the author and a book name on my Discord, I can keep it in mind for both of us and we can check it out sometime.
Yeah.
That sounds like a good plan. But gosh knows, I think I finished all my books. I don't think I can say anything else unless we want to talk about Harry Potter or Hunger Games or the Twilight stuff. And I know you haven't read Twilight, have you? I don't think you've read them.
Maybe the first book.
Yeah.
I don't think I read the
first one's kind of dull.
First one's
Well, you know, I didn't read it I'd seen the movie,
Mhm.
and I did like it. And I decided to take the book out of the library, so I took the audiobook out, and Ileana Kadushin reads all the books. And the first time I was trying to listen, it's a young adult book by an author who's never written anything. I mean, she's not young adult, but it's a young adult book by somebody who's never written anything for publishing. And I didn't like Ileana Kadushin at the time. I still don't really like her reading of the first book. But now I don't think I could ever listen to anybody else read those books. Like, I really got to like her after a while. But it's like the first 3 times I tried to listen to that book, I could not do it. And then I couldn't get myself to read it either because I was like, it's just boring. And the first book kind of is. The first book's more boring. The other ones get more involved, and I like those. Nothing new. I was just checking.
See? You really dump all that out. On
Vincent, you have a bowl. Just dumped the whole bag of popcorn on the table. This is why I clean, so he can make a mess of it. I guess it's called being a mother.
It is.
Anyway, that was fun to announce to the world.
Penny.
I'm acting like a chicken.
I don't want you to act like a chicken. I want you to eat like a boy. Thank you. It's not funny. You're 9. You're almost 10. Grow up. Please.
No.
Anyway, he's getting crazy. I'm getting tired. Tomorrow's Easter, and we got to be up early so that we can go to the in-laws for dinner because we're going to be there like all day, which is fine. But we're getting picked up early. Yeah, for a little bit. And I'm out of stuff to talk about right now. I love talking about my books, but it's easier when you and I can appreciate each other's books, but we don't share the same books for the most part, which is fine. It's easier when it's somebody else that's into it. So when we're both talking about the books we both read, when you finish 11/22/63, maybe we'll talk about it.
Okay.
I mean, that'll be a shorter live stream, but maybe we'll do it and just because then you'll understand my absolute passion for it, even if you don't share it. Because it's a very long book. King likes to go on forever, but at least in this book, it's because his characters go on forever. It's not just because he isn't stopping. The characters just tend to tangent, and they're aware of it. That's why Al is like, just cut me off if I go off on a side tangent again. You know? It's like, are you self-censoring yourself now, King? All right. So thank you for coming out to the live stream tonight, guys. As you can tell, I still have just my laptop, but I have a desk. Little triumphs.
Yeah.
My friend is hopefully still hunting down the parts so he can build me a nice new computer. Eventually, I will be putting my reviews together. No idea when my next live stream will be. No idea what it will be about. We kind of came up with this topic yesterday. So we're making them up on the fly. That's why this one was a little bit more of a struggle. I'm impressed we got this far in it.
Yeah.
And I'll give you more time next time if you're a part of it, so you can have more time to think about things.
Thank you.
She's just having some cognitive issues her doctors are ignoring her on, so we're trying to help her through that.
Well, no, you're not losing your memory. You just told me to remember 3 words like 2 minutes ago. I can't do it, and that's not losing my memory.
Yeah, exactly.
You said it 2 minutes ago. I know you said 3 words. I just don't know what they are.
Yeah. Yeah. That's actually an issue, believe it or not, Doc. I don't know what school of medicine you went to, but the school of medicine I didn't go to tells me.
Right? Says that this could be a problem. And that you should do something about it, but no.
Well, at least you can walk better now.
That's true. Small victories.
Exactly. Small victories, small triumphs. You guys, please don't forget to share, comment, like, subscribe. The sharing thing's a big deal because, you never get seen if nobody knows you're there.
That's true.
But obviously, I'm not going to force you guys. It's entirely up to you. If you've got topic ideas, feel free to share in the comment section. Commenting boosts the rating on YouTube. Freaking algorithms. Double standards, YouTube.
don't yell at YouTube or they'll get rid of your channel.
Come here.
I can make a new one.
They'll delete that one too. They'll delete that one too. Why not?
All right. Again,
Are you also going to dye your hair, go completely incognito, and make sure they have no idea who you are?
I could pull it out in the shadows.
Zip.
Go.
Where's the remote?
I don't know. Go away.
Oh, go away. That right there. Classic star. Thank you. Go away.
All right, guys. Thank you. I hope you had fun. Even if I hope it was informative. I hope it gave you some good ideas of what to read or even watch. And I will see you on the next stream. I need you to hit end live stream for me. Thank you.